Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
I think we need him for the quorum.
Okay, the meeting is live. You may proceed at any time.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk. What's going on here? Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was watching for Jeffrey Ford to come back on.
We do have a quorum though.
They'll have a quorum
Someone
without
else
him.
jumped on now.
Uh-huh. Well, Annie jumped on, but she's not a member of the committee.
No, Kara Spencer is a member, and I just saw her.
Carrie is, I missed her. Okay. Would you please call the roll? I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro,
Present.
Alderwoman Howard,
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Muhammad,
Here.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Okay.
Alderwoman Navarro,
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Evans, Chairwoman Davis,
Present.
Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Boyd.
Boyd is
Alderman-
present.
Thank you. Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Evans. 7 present, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, at this moment, I do know that Alderman Oldenburg and Alderwoman Middlebrook have asked to be excused.
So noted.
Thank you. Let's see here. I'll ask for a motion to approve our minutes from 5/20.
I'll make
So
that
moved.
second.
Been moved and second to approve our minutes from 5/20. Please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderwoman Navarro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Evans, Chairwoman Davis.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Thank you. Today we will continue with having departments before us to make presentations. At this moment, we're trying to contact Jamie Wilson, who was scheduled to go first. I'm not sure what happened. Parks Department is not due to 10 a.m. and it would be unfair to try to ask them to scramble right now. So it appears that we're going to wait just maybe a couple of minutes to find out what's going on with the street department. And if they're not available, we may recess and come back at 10.
Madam Chair, the Director of Streets just joined the call.
I saw just as I ended my sentence. There you are. Thank you.
Sorry, technical difficulties. We were on, and then I realized we didn't have video feeding here, so we're back on.
Thank you, sir. So welcome, Director of Streets, Jamie Wilson. You're scheduled to have a presentation from your department. I will leave it up to you to open up with whatever you'd like to have discussed in the beginning for your budget, and then you can introduce staff and or have them interject where you feel necessary. And then what the committee will ask questions after that. Okay, so please start.
Okay. Again, I'm Jamie Wilson. I'm here with Todd Walterman. I think you guys can see us all from the video. And Kent Flake.
Yes.
We're here from the street department to discuss our fiscal 22 budget. In general, we are divided into 5 departments: the director's office 510, traffic and lighting 511, towing 513, street maintenance 514, and the refuse division 516. We have a modest change from the previous year of 39 million in our budget to 41 million. That's about a 5% increase, 2 million. Nothing really fancy this year as far as changes from fiscal 22. Our employee positions haven't really changed. So it's just mostly modest increase for salaries and payroll additives. So kind of open to questions. Each of the divisions is here to answer any, but there's nothing really added in fiscal 22.
Okay, so I'll allow the committee members to ask questions. And we're going to start with Alderman Boyd.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Todd, Jamie, and Kent. The street department is probably one of my favorite departments. I only have one concern about streets, and it's not directly as far as how it's managed, but the whole speed bump deal. Since it's become so popular, and the expectation is that the aldermen pay for it out of their capital, it's starting to really reduce the amount of capital that we can actually spend. So can you tell us, Jamie, on average, how much does one speed bump cost? And on average, how many speed bumps have been installed, monthly over the past couple of years?
I would say the average, I guess it depends on the width of the street, but probably in general, it's $3,000, $3,500, I would guess, per hump, asphalt hump. As far as the number per month, I couldn't do that without looking back on BPS's construction schedule, what they've been installing. I would say we probably have easily a couple hundred in the city at this point after four or 5 years of this policy. I can get that and provide you with. I was just saying I can follow up with the data to support your question.
And 3,500 is pretty much the asphalt, the contractor installing the hump, correct?
Right. That's BPS's citywide contractor's price.
Right.
And that's my guesstimate on it. I think that's what the going rate is, but I can again follow this up with a better answer.
And it costs us about $900 for the study. Is that correct?
That is, I thought that was actually slightly higher. I thought it was about $1,000 per study.
1,000. Okay. Yeah.
But that is, again, that's the street department eats 5 studies per ward per fiscal year internally with our own forces free. And then anything above and beyond that, that's what we said we just couldn't keep up with the demand. So that's how we ended up where we're at, where we do some internally and then the rest after that gets farmed out to the BPS's on-call traffic engineers. We started way back in the past when the calming policy first was developed. We started doing all the studies internally and then we couldn't keep up. So then we weren't able to provide for the aldermen. So that's where contractually the on-call traffic engineers came into play. And there was a year or so where they did all of them. And then as of last fiscal year, we said, we'll take back 5. Anything above that one up in the same boat where I can't keep up with it. You guys have excessive delay waiting for the result of that. So that's where we're at. Currently, street does 5 per year per ward. And then it starts.
And Jamie, typically on a 1-block street, and I guess some blocks could really be longer than others. I know I stay on Rowan Avenue, so I'm guessing my street is about 900 feet. Would that sound about right?
There's some feet.
Yeah,
Or you-
linear feet.
Okay.
Is that about right?
Long block.
For a block?
That's a long block, yeah.
That's a long block. So a typical block, how much is paving for a typical block in the city?
You say paving, I'm sorry.
Paving, right. If you want to resurface, repave the street.
The cost.
The length is 500.
The length is 500 feet.
Okay.
Your cost is probably 12 grand.
12 grand is probably the cost for paving.
12 grand. So 3 speed bumps would be equivalent to paving 1 street. Okay. Only reason I bring that up is because people, it's almost like speed bumps are free. And when the aldermen have to, pay for it out of capital improvement, it takes away from us being able to pave certain streets. And certainly some streets are much longer, especially if you have a double block street like, Roosevelt and Terry to 56, 5700 blocks like that, it becomes even more. And I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm hoping that, we can figure out how to just keep it all in streets and that it doesn't come out of ward capital and do it that way, because they are popular. And I just find it difficult to manage a budget when people keep asking for speed humps. And then once we sit down with you guys to do the capital budget, excuse me, and it's real tight, and then people start asking for speed humps, we may not have any money to do the study or to do to actually install the speed humps. And then we end up being the bad people because we don't have any money for it. So I actually offline, Jamie, would like to sit down with you and talk about how we can actually come up with a citywide speed hump installation program where it's taken off the alderman, because, we're held accountable for almost everything, but it's not like we have unlimited funds, which also would mean that more money would have to be allocated to the street department to do speed humps, unlike ever before. So it's a good idea, has an unintended consequence with the alderman with that capital, but it also going to have an unintended consequence for the street department. And I personally just appreciated when we didn't have speed humps and then we didn't have all these problems. And we have to figure out a better citywide program to deal with the speeding other than just installing speed humps all over the city. Other traffic calming measures, we should consider, and maybe even see if we can get some matching funds from the federal government to do better traffic calming measures throughout the city of St. Louis so that we don't have to do as many speed humps. So anyway, that's my commentary. Again, I want to sit down and work with you that in a way that it works for, all the aldermen, not just me, but actually all the aldermen. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And thank you, Todd, Kent, and Jamie for all that you do for the city.
All right, thank you. Alderman Vaccaro.
So, excuse me. So are you pretty overall satisfied with your budget? Is mostly the reason I ask is generally these are, how do we find a way to fix if there's an issue?
So, yeah, to answer that, so backing up to our overall, traditionally before COVID, we would come in, asking for increases here, increases there. Did that last year, had the pandemic hit. We weren't hiring anybody for a year. It's a little difficult to add on or propose changes when we haven't filled our vacancies, and we're fully conscious of what we're going through right now as a city, I guess as a world. But it would be a big step forward to start hiring some people, getting back to where we're at, so we can have those traditional conversations every year at budget time where we're filled. Our vacancies are filled and we're saying, hey, we're so busy, we need more positions, or we need more in our materials accounts. We know that we're in a better financial situation as a city that we can start asking for this stuff. It seemed a little out of touch with reality to come in at this point, propose a bunch of changes when we haven't been able to hire anyone before, until we fill those vacancies, or when the city's in a better financial state to start asking for additions.
Is the money in your budget to fill all the vacancies?
Yes.
So when it comes to, I know we're short refuse drivers. Has there been an impact in that?
I think we're authorized, I don't think, we are authorized for 438 positions as a department. That's all 5 divisions. And we're over 100 vacant, and that's at the time the ink hit the pages that you guys are looking at. So that's probably changed since then, but we're over 100 vacancies department wide. But those are in the budget and we just need to fill them.
Have we done, I mean, I guess refuge is, have we been able to get refuge drivers?
Sure, yep, for sure.
So, yeah, the new refuse guy here, right? So I've been deep into this. We had 52 slots filled yesterday of 67. That's a high, believe it or not. We barely ever cross 50. You have to understand, even though we have 52 there, we only get about 40 to show up because of, being hurt on the job and vacation and standard time off. There's a, lost time there, which is normal. But we went through the existing employees there. We've spread them out because they had some compression in their pay. So 3/4 of the existing employees got little bumps in pay in the last year, trying to retain them. We've raised the minimum up about 15%. We've added a $1,500 signing bonus if you pass your working test period. And here we sit. Waste Management just had a hiring career fair last weekend, and they were offering a minimum of $21 an hour. Our people get a little under 17. And if you have talent, the numbers were offered of $25 to $27 an hour. If you come in with talent, 4 years of talent. So they're poaching our drivers. They're taking our drivers. We can't retain them. The only reason they're staying is because they're working themselves to death. They are working every Wednesday and Saturday for overtime. We will spend $1 million this year in overtime. And it's inhumane. It's wrong. Okay. So we need to address the problems there. And I personally believe it's that we've never compensated our people that get CDL licenses. Over the years, the federal government has put more and more rules and laws on how to operate a CDL. And I don't think we ever compensated them fairly. We set up the tow division. We know we got cars sitting all over the place. We can't fill the tow spots. These are critical jobs that I really personally think we need to, research it and give these people a $4 or $5 an hour bump. But it's the only way it works, Joe. We've tried everything on it.
No, I get that. The only other thing I have, and these are just, how do we, so it doesn't sound like there's a lot you need us to try to move around and make things, but how we fix for trash trucks and street sweepers and equipment. And is any of that can be covered on any additional stuff? Can that be covered like we did with the fire department under some of the money coming in from the government, the relief money?
As far as the trash trucks part, we're 4 or 5 years into the 10-year program with the trash fee increase on buying trucks. I think it was about 76 or 80 trucks overall over those 10 years. This year, we're planning to purchase 3 more trucks. So that part of it's been working for us. I don't know if you want to speak towards the sweepers.
So the trash trucks, we delayed the purchase this current year because of the COVID budget. We were scared. So we held back 6 months in ordering them. So we have 8 new trucks coming in here in about 4 months. So our trash trucks are good. I want to tell you this last week, we just got rid of all the 2000 trucks that are not being considered daily drivers. And there's only 3 or 4 of them that are a 2007 model. That is huge to be able to say we now have a refuse fleet, that the oldest truck in the fleet is only 14 years old. And that is wonderful. And so it's set up for the trucks and the fleet to succeed down there at refuse. We just need labor. Ken can speak to the other equipment.
And street maintenance wise, your sweepers, your dumps for snow, that kind of stuff. We're actually sitting pretty good, other than we've got a few oddball pieces. We've got a concrete batch truck you've probably seen where it actually mixes the concrete on board. that one's getting old. Like I said, it's more the oddball stuff. But overall, general operations, we're doing pretty decent on equipment.
Well, what about, and then I'll end at this, but beside the street sweeper, what about the vacuum? I mean, the big thing always during leaf season, the equipment's always broke. Have you done anything, or do we need to try to find a way to fix the vacuum truck or something, or?
I just met with a guy last week with another vacuum. The problem is we had these old ones from the 80s, which you can't legally make anymore, that were phenomenal at the job they did. And we got that newer one, 4 years ago, with the kind of elephant trunk that comes off the side. And it does a very good job, but it's very slow and very methodical, just the way it works. So I keep hitting all these guys up, trying to see if anybody has anything out there that is more efficient than what we're currently using. The problem is, at the end of the day, you're spending $150,000, $200,000 on something I get 3 to 4 weeks worth of use out of, maybe 6 at most. And so it's always trying to find something that's actually useful for something else that we can use more than 6 weeks out of the year that would actually help us in the rest of our operation for that big a price tag.
Well, I know, but those 6 weeks, unless we go to a different system and let people just bag them, those 6 weeks are probably 6 of the most complaining weeks. But then, sewers are, I mean, when the leaves go down the sewer, it causes backups into people's homes because, but that's not a budget thing. So just sticking with the budget, so there's nothing in the budget you guys feel we need to find to try to fix anything. It sounds good. So at least I believe that. So I will end it at that. But I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, sir. Alderwoman Howard.
Yes, I have a few questions. I would like to know, due to the pandemic, you said that the overtime, you have money there for overtime. Would it be any advantage to take that overtime money and maybe we can figure out a way to give these people a raise? Or would that not work so well?
I think you're referencing the refuse drivers and the, it's something that needs to be looked at in the pay ordinance. It's going to take an act of you guys, everybody, to do that. But, speaking as a whole, you can't just change one without affecting the others.
Right,
So
right.
it's become a citywide package that needs to be looked at. We, in my old job, we dealt with this when we went to $15 an hour. We're still dealing with points of compression where we brought people up to 15, and there's people immediately in front of it, 2 or 3 steps that are all crunched in there now, that adjustments are still being made. So it's a big picture item, but it needs to be done.
Right.
When I compared us to Waste Management, we do offer one heck of a pension program that has a big value to it, but these young people can't see that anymore. And there's
See,
no
that was
value.
the next question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they don't appreciate the value of our pension. Nobody seems to care about that when you're offering it up. They hear 401k, they hear some dollar per hour and they're jumping at it, So
they don't know that we're all probably going to live to be 100. So if we're good. The other question I have is on street paving and maintenance. It just seems to be really far behind. I get a lot of complaints, and my pat answer is we're behind because of COVID. We can't get people to work. Is there any plan to try to address this a little more expediently? I know, the weather and, what have you has all impacts these things, but, the streets are really in bad shape.
Yeah, and I'll address that. Honestly, when it all comes down to the personnel, And currently in street maintenance, I've got 103 people out of 157. And I mean, it's 34% vacant. And this is lower end employees as far as the salaries, and we're not looking for rocket scientists. We're not looking for guys necessarily with CDLs. We're training you to get the CDLs. And I mean, that's 25, 30 people out of that 54 vacancies. And in springtime, you're actually doing pretty good and catching up on the potholes and the street maintenance. We started paving 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago on the stuff we still had left over from last year. Well, that takes those same guys that were patching, and now they're out paving. So at this point, it's either do this or do that, and that's kind of where we're at.
So did we defer paving? Did any paving happen last year? I really think there was none in my ward, but I just was wondering, was there any paving going on at all for during the pandemic?
Yeah, actually 2019, we had a ton of work. A lot of that got carried over. And if you happen to be downtown last year, you would have noticed Ameren gave us a little over $1 million, I think, in order to do a bunch of paving downtown after they finished up their projects. So actually,
I know downtown is in pretty good shape, but I'm not downtown, and I have to answer to my constituents. They're here in the 14th ward, and it's rough. So I just was wondering, and I guess when we meet in our budget meetings, we'll have a better plan and can zero in on that. But I mean, I guess overall, how do you see, are you going to get to most of the jobs you have planned?
We have about 20 streets or alleys currently left over from last year. I anticipate to finish those in probably the next 30 days. So as soon as we start meeting and people start solidifying the paving list, we're going to be right out there probably the next day. If I get somebody to tell me I want to do this, and this, we're probably going to be starting in that ward or a ward probably the next day.
Okay, I'll get my list together and check it twice. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we start by just understanding the roles of the folks in the street department? I see Todd Walterman over there, but I have no idea what, I mean, I'm assuming by what you were talking about that, and by rumors that you're involved in the refuse department, but could you introduce yourselves and your titles?
Yeah, I'm Jamie Wilson, Acting Director, technically Traffic Commissioner. This is Todd Walterman, Refuse Commissioner, and Kent Flake, Commissioner of Streets.
Well, congratulations, Todd. I guess this is how we find out your new role.
Well, it was in the paper. It was in the news 2 weeks ago. But
well, I must have missed the blip. Well, anyway, so now I know who to contact for refuse, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. All right, great. I think it might be helpful to understand maybe from a general sense. So we're looking at, I know, Jamie, that you mentioned all of the departments under streets here. We got from like 195, I understand. We've got the director all the way through the refuse department to 18 in the budget book. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you want a description of each of the divisions?
Okay, and that's where that figure you mentioned orally at the beginning of this, that the total budget for the department went from. Could you repeat that, Jamie?
Overall for the department, it was 39 million and change in fiscal 21, and now in fiscal 22, the budget is 41 million and change.
Okay, and that is for, let's get this right, for the streets department, the tow division, traffic and lighting, refuse, all of those departments. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you give us a general understanding of how much of that budget goes to the various, I mean, I know we have this budget book here, but part of the process here is to have a public hearing and kind of have a broad understanding of, what we're funding. So the, can you give us a broad understanding of how much we spend as a city on an annual basis paving streets?
Paving, not patching, what would you say, That's about an average?
Typically, between St. Louis Works and Capital, we spend about 2.5 million per year.
2.5 million per year paving streets.
Yep.
And how much of that is out of the ward capital, Kent?
Oh, I'd say just ballparking, I think about 1.3 to 1.5 million in St. Louis Works. Another million is capital at this point.
Okay, and how much of that is done internally versus under contract?
All of that is internal.
All of that's contract or internal?
Internal.
Okay. So 2.5 million for a city our size is, how would you say that compares nationally? I mean, I know Kansas City, for example, has a paving budget of, I believe it's over $10 million a year. Would you say?
I'm not sure how it compares nationally. We are one of the only municipalities that actually does its own paving.
Okay.
I researched on this about 7-8 years ago. And our cost at that point was about $7 or $8 a square yard. And that included labor, material, equipment, etc. And the going rate at that time, if you were to hire a contractor, was about $18 to $20 a square yard.
Okay, so is it less expensive for us to handle it internally?
It was last time I checked. I would assume that is still true.
That was about 7 or 8 years ago. Is that right, Kent?
Yeah, it was probably 2012, I think, is when I did the research on that.
Okay. It would be, so the ward capital, the kind of what we pave on an annual basis is determined by conversations with the alderman and the street department, correct? Like in those meetings, how is the 1.3 St. Louis Works? Is that similar? Does that all go through the kind of request on an aldermanic basis?
That is correct.
Do we have a 5 or a 10-year plan on paving roads in the city of St. Louis?
Not at all.
And, it's unusual for a city to not, have a plan like that, a citywide, and a budget that would sort of be able to tell our residents what we can and can't expect. So I would argue that, we're wildly anemic in our streets budget for not having a, sort of a 10-year plan for paving and infrastructure upgrades and letting our residents know that we are investing in their streets. Where does the 2.5 million come from? Do you know? Is that just from the general fund?
About $1 million from the general fund. That other 1.3 to 1.5, that's from St. Louis Works, which is a utility tax, and there's a DMV tax in there also.
So there's a couple of other funding streams directly related to streets. The gasoline tax, for example, which I believe generates around $8 million a year for the city of St. Louis. I could be wrong on that figure, but it's significantly higher, I believe, than that 2.5 million. And then of course we have parking revenue. Do any of those funds go into actual infrastructure investment?
Not with us.
No, they go into general revenue. All those funds drop into general revenue and then it's budgeted out through this process.
Well, I just like to state on the record that I just think that's very unfortunate. We generate funds out of our streets by way of gasoline tax and parking revenue, and that those funds are not going into the very infrastructure that allows us to generate those funds. And we are so wildly anemic in what we, invest in our streets and our, roadways and the very things that, are homeowners, business owners, and investment community relies on that infrastructure to make our city function on a very basic level. To hear that we only have, $2.5 million in our, paving budget on an annual basis is just unreasonable for our city with the amount of roadways that we have, not to mention the alleys and other things that are in wild need of repair, in gross disrepair throughout every single ward in the city of St. Louis. So if you all aren't going to advocate for more money in your budgets, I'm going to do it for you. I think it's absolutely unreasonable that we only put $2.5 million into paving. Do we have a budget for non-traditional or non-vehicular investments, for example, pedestrian safety? What did we spend on an annual basis? For sidewalk repair, for example, street calming and making our streets, our roads and transportation safer for non-vehicular transit.
Yeah, that's expended in a lot of different ways. I have to add that all together, whether it's humps, at signals, crosswalks, improvements done through BPS. I have to add that up to be able to answer that.
It would be really helpful, Jamie, to be able to add that up and have an understanding there. I will say that the city of St. Louis has a pedestrian fatality rate 3 times the national average. And we need to get serious about investing in our communities. That pedestrian fatality rate, really disproportionately impacts lower income communities, wards and neighborhoods that have seen disinvestment over many, many, many years. And if we could identify those funds, those 2 funding streams that I mentioned earlier, both the gasoline tax and the parking revenue, to start to make our streets not only better paved, but safer for all, I think we'd all be in a much better position.
No, I agree with that. I think part of that, to have that money is key to be able to do what you need to fix a problem. One of the tougher things I've seen in looking at pedestrian fatalities, and you should look at it anyway in detail, but it makes you look at it even more in detail when you don't have a ton of money, is I have to be really frugal how I spend this.
Yeah.
Diving through those pedestrian fatalities over all the years of data we have, trying to isolate, where is this happening? Where should we focus our money? What we have, focus it on that. Had a real problem with, initially you would think, hey, I just dress up this intersection, do a mid-block crossing, and it all looks nice, correct ADA ramps, all that kind of stuff. Mission accomplished. Looking at the data though, it's easily over the majority of these fatalities happen in the middle of the night. People are on a 5-lane cross section, standing in the center left turn lane, not at an intersection, not at a signal, sometimes 100 feet from a signal, where we do have an actual crossing. People are jumping across in the middle of the night, they're getting hit, and it's a hit and run. So it's disturbing that that's what the data is pointing to. And then I really struggle internally. How do I fix that with money? Is it a mid-block crossing 100 feet from a signal? That doesn't make any sense. So my point is, I would love the funds to be able to do, X, Y, and Z with. I also would like the front end analysis of this to really start focus on how we can the best bang for the buck for what we do have. We're not going to be flush with money, but we need to be really smart how we spend it. And I don't want to do a $250,000 signal and then just up the street from us at Wilson and Hampton, I can watch people routinely cross 50 feet from the intersection where they have a protected signal to go across. I see people cutting through live traffic to get to the gas station when we've got this expensive accommodation right there. So it's frustrating that you could do that, and it's a big accomplishment to get it done, and then people still go there. So I don't know if it's an education point. We can have some of this money focused towards materials and for doing these type of improvements, but somewhere we've got to start educating people and holding them responsible for where they cross. Nobody wants people dying crossing our streets like that, and it's not as easy as just having a nice dressed up intersection. It's part of it for sure, but there's also a portion that has to be responsible on the people walking across there and what we could do to stop that type of behavior.
Well, while I agree with you that there's some personal, responsibility on the part of the pedestrians, I also know that there's a lot of pedestrian fatalities that aren't as you described. And even if we took those off, I do think that we need to take a look at making some infrastructure investments. And, I think we need some definitive answers on how to make our city a safer place for pedestrians rather than, so that we have a path forward so we can move through this. Those hit and runs are devastating. They're devastating for families, they're devastating for individuals, they're devastating for communities who, can't cross the street safely. If we could, I know the budget director's on here. Paul, would you mind just hopping on and letting us know what the total from the gasoline tax and from the parking revenue, the money that we generate on our streets is, just from a general sense? If the budget director's there. Are you there, Paul?
Yeah, right. In general revenue, we get about $8 million per year from.
Say that again, Paul.
In general revenue, we receive about $8 million per year.
That's from the gasoline tax?
Yes.
Okay.
We also
That's what I thought.
a portion of that, and then an additional $630,000 in capital for a piece of that gasoline tax.
So 8.6 million?
Yeah, I'm looking up the revenue book right now. Yeah, our estimate for this coming year was 8.2 in general revenue, and then you had another $600,000 in capital.
Great, and that's going to be going. The state increase is just going to impact the state's portion, or does that trickle down to the municipality, Paul?
It should track down because the Constitution lays out how the distribution is going to happen. Now, when you look at those revenues, we're going to, and if you look back at the last 10 years, it's based on census appropriation. So while you will see an increase resulting from the increase in the tax, which is a good thing, you can also expect to have a readjustment based on the new census figures. And if you look back at the last census figures, given that the city's population as a portion of the total state was down, I would expect to also see a reduction in that as well. So it's going to be an increase related to the increase in the rate, but I expect you're also going to see a decrease due to the census.
Okay, so we get 8.6 million out of the gas tax, and what do we get out of parking? What do we generate, and then what do we get?
You're talking about the gross receipts tax, the license fee from parking?
Just parking tickets, all that sort of thing, what we generate on the streets.
We get a proportion from the parking meter division. Is that what you're?
Yeah. Not the garages. There's just the what we get on.
Yeah, the Traffic Violations Bureau. Let's see. City Courts has.
Well, I think it's the 40% from the parking division.
Well, I think we're talking about traffic violations. Yeah, we do get the 60-40. I mean, the 40% from the parking division.
Paul, maybe this is a question for a longer discussion. I guess my point is just that we have, a lot of money coming in generated on the streets of St. Louis, and that we're not putting them back in. So, I just think that there's a big disconnect there, and we all need to be aware of that and be working to fix it. Because if we aren't paving the streets for our residents, they're going to leave. And if we're not doing that basic level of upkeep to the roadways that people need to get around here, and we're going to have a hard time keeping residents with this 2.5 million, and it's just up to the alderman to decide which streets we're going to pave on a regular basis. I mean, I'm not a street engineer, and I'm happy to choose the ones that work best in my community, but on the other hand, we need a 10-year plan, and we need, to be able to communicate to the investment community, those who are thinking about, making significant investments in the city of St. Louis, where we're going to be shoring those up with some infrastructure, and that we have a serious approach to how we do business here. And then I just don't think that with $2.5 million going into our streets that we're doing that. So I don't want to take anybody else's, I'm taking up a lot of time here. I think, Todd, your point about pay raises is not lost on any of us. I think, again, we need some real hard data here on what, if what we need to do is raise those salaries. I think it would be helpful to come to this hearing with an actual ask, what the national rate is or what we need to be paying. I think we all know that we do not pay city employees competitive rates across the board, and hiring is very difficult right now in a general sense. So, if there's a specific ask, there's a way that we can do it better, please direct us, let us know, because we're not in a position to obtain that information, but you are. Lastly, I'll just say I had a question for Paul in one of the previous hearings about monitoring. There was some budget for monitoring vehicles of some, and I was asking if we actually monitor the whereabouts of vehicles in our street department, our towing department, the street sweepers, the refuse, and that sort of thing, so we have an understanding of where they are, what houses or portions of routes get skipped sometimes. I know there are tough turns sometimes that tend to get skipped more than others, and having some kind of digital monitoring would be helpful for us and for the city to understand where that's happening on a more frequent basis.
Yeah, Jamie, that's that item that we added to your budget this year.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
right?
No, the FY22 budget, yeah. In
Right,
communication.
it is in our fiscal 22 budget. That was one of the budgeted in our director's office, the 510 number you're seeing there on page 195 is enough to cover in one of those line items for communications and contractual services. We've got a monthly bill of approximated $35 per month per device. So that's about 300 devices in the street department as far as real-time monitoring, and that's a software subscription annual cost for maintaining that service for exactly what you're talking about.
That's that line item that goes from 2,000 to 131.
Yeah, I think there was something else that added in there, but I think we had about $126,000. If you back that down, it's, I think, 300 devices at $35 a month.
I'm glad to hear we're doing that. I think, it just would be helpful to understand where those things are getting missed and how we can better improve those, the delivery of services.
For sure.
Alderwoman Spencer, I hate it, but I have to cut you off.
Madam Chair, that was my last one.
That was your last one?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Director. I won't ask too many questions. I do it privately because I know Randy. It's good to see the department as well.
You're going in and out there on this side. I don't know.
All right, we can't hear you. Alderman Muhammad, you're having technical difficulty. We can't hear you.
It looks like you're on mute.
He was going in and out. I think he's just having problems. If necessary, he can come back in, and we'll move on to you, Alderwoman.
Can you hear me
Navarro.
now, Madam Director?
Are you back? Okay.
I don't know if you can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can now.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't ask too many questions. I know we're short on time. I do want to know if the acting commissioner of refuge, if he's still on board with the department.
Yep, Randy's still there. Randy's the deputy commissioner.
Okay, good to know. He's done a fantastic job, and it's great to see you, Tom.
Always good to be seen.
No questions, Madam Chair. I will communicate directly with Kent myself.
All right, thank you, sir. Alderwoman Navarro.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And Thank you, Jamie, Kent, and Todd, and you all have really important jobs to do, very important to the city, and thank you for all your hard work. I do have a few questions. One, just going back to this idea of having a 5-10-year plan, knowing, you know, like what the schedule is for which streets, maybe that's based on usage, population, age of the street, that sort of thing. What would it take to get something done like that? Is that something we can do internally, or is that something that would have to be contracted out for some sort of street assessment?
Walk through your concept.
We currently have what we call pavement management system. All that essentially does is rates streets on a scale of 1 through 10. It factors in the classification, whether it's a residential or whether it's a major arterial. At some point, I mean, that information there is pretty easy to get, but then you have to cross-reference that where, because our program is just going to say this road is really bad, but there might not be anybody that lives on that road or actually drives that road. So at some point, you got to go across that with whether traffic counts, population, which our numbers are pretty easy to get as far as a base rating and that kind of stuff in order to be able to overlay that with population. I don't think it'd be that hard, but it's not that easy either. You know, it's there's a lot of factors that would actually come into actually making a list that was actually decent instead of just a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that would be really helpful. And I understand just because of the lack of funding or, you know, inconsistency in that, you know, we'd have to be able to act on those assessments and keep them up to date as well. But it does seem like that would be really, really helpful overall. I know that there's, so the other funds that we also get, there's the federal grants. And I don't know if somebody could just walk through what are those different buckets of federal grants that we regularly apply for some of the major projects.
We have first one that we use a lot is called Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, CMAQ, CMAQ. That's one that we typically use. That's about the only way realistically a city like us, or actually a lot of cities do this. It's very expensive to rebuild a traffic signal. You know, it's $250,000 from start to finish.
You say to rebuild a traffic signal?
To rebuild a traffic signal is about $250,000 per intersection.
Okay.
So a lot of times we use those federal grants for CMAQ to do corridor wide improvements. That's multiple intersections on a stretch. So maybe 8 to 10 signals will be kind of a standard CMAQ project. And in doing so, you rebuild all your signals. But in order to qualify for those CMAQ funds, there's 5 counties in the area that compete for those through East-West Gateway. So there may be only $35 or $40 million available for the whole 5-county spread. So it's very competitive. They evaluate all the applications for those funds to evaluate what's their bang for the buck. For the dollar spent, how are you reducing, by the name of it, reducing congestion, improving air quality? So less, that translates to less times that cars are sitting there idling, fewer unnecessary stops, that type of stuff. So you reduce your fuel costs and you also reduce your vehicle emissions by doing these type of improvements. So a lot of times it's moving traffic better than it was before you left the project. So a typical project, while it does rebuild a signal, will add side street detection. So the signal doesn't go to the side street where nobody's there, causing everyone on the main line where that majority of traffic is to stop, idle, start up again, wear and tear on vehicles, fuel costs, and then the pollutants. So that's where these projects, you put that stuff in. Then when you go in the end to look from the 8 to 10 signals, it used to take this long to get there, this number of stops, this amount of delay. Now you're able to go there after the improvements, do those same studies, and then the delta is your savings. So you could save $1 million in fuel costs per year by doing an improvement, for example, and then X amount of pounds of pollutants. So that's how the CMAQ projects.
And then you apply every year for that one?
Yeah, every year.
Okay.
So typically the 5 counties will for sure get a project. It's really competitive after you get your one project. So Usually it's 1 to 2 projects per year you would get for the city for those type of signal improvements. And then I say signal improvements, it's everything touching the signal. So it's the push buttons, the ADA ramps, all that type of stuff. So that price, 250,000, is probably nowadays a little bit higher. It's probably 275 once you start doing all that stuff. Things are just increasing costs and increasing standards on what type of accommodations you provide at the intersections. But so CMAQ is one of the federal grants. There's another one, STP, which is Surface Transportation Program. That is not as much about moving traffic like CMAQ is. It's more of the some of the structural and physical accommodations within a corridor. A lot of times that's used for your bridge work. So that's, or maybe a streetscape type job where if I had a corridor like a CMAQ corridor and we did new sidewalks, new plantings, all that kind of stuff doesn't score as well for CMAQ because it doesn't really directly relate to how you're able to improve traffic flow. That, on the other hand, is more taken into consideration for the STP funds for those federal grants. So those two, and again, those are largely bridge projects that the city gets for those. 20%. And then both of those with the STP or CMAQ requires a 20% match by the local agency that applies for it. So the feds pay 80%, the local match is 20%, which is great, but even as we all know, the 20% local match is still difficult to find.
Great, thank you. And are those, is that?
I forgot one more, the TAP grants, the Transportation Alternatives Program. That's a smaller bucket of money, but it's different again from the STP and the CMAQ grants in that it's more focused on pedestrian and bicycle accommodations that normally wouldn't score as well as the larger scale improvements in STP or CMAQ grants. Recent examples like the Tower Grove Park project that's complete now. That was a past recent TAP grant. So it's probably $1 million. I think it's $1 million. It might be $1 million cap on those projects. So it's smaller, but it's still $1 million where we're only paying 20%. So it's something that we will always apply for and continue to apply for all 3 of those type of federal project grants.
Great. And does that get reflected in this budget anywhere? I mean, I don't know what the timeline of those is with our budgeting cycle.
No, we don't. So as the price we'd be looking, or the money we'd be looking for is the match money. We don't have a line item for the match money within the street department budget. That's usually accomplished by seeking the assistance of an alderman that maybe has a project. So if I have a CMAQ project where it's involved in like the Goodfellow CMAQ project we're doing now, say you got 8-10 signals there, we're getting donations from the alderman for making up that match money. The Tower Grove Connector project, Arch Park Foundation's got a bunch of money. The Cortex has got a bunch of money. They helped us with the local match, and the local alderpersons did as well. So it's a team effort as far as the local alderpersons and some entities like a Cortex, for example, that can help with those funds.
Okay, thank you. Are there ever any private foundation grants for, whether it's pedestrian safety or improving bike infrastructure, like those sorts of things that we go after? Are those out there, and are there more funds that we could be going after in some of those categories?
I think there's probably more and more that's coming out these days as the focus gets away from pushing traffic as fast and as quick as possible. It's a struggle to find those because they are new. What you have one year, you don't have another year, and it's called something else from someone else. So it is a challenge to keep up with those things, and it's something we keep our ears open for. And anytime someone hears about something, we are absolutely open to pursuing it and putting an application in.
Great, thank you. And then, I know we talked earlier a little bit how, there's a lot of equipment that might be great to have, but, whether it's the leaf collecting equipment, and I know I've reached out before to Kent about various things, various types of alternative pavers or pervious pavement. And I know there's a lot out there, and some of it's better than others. Is there ever an opportunity for us to pool resources with some of the other municipalities where, you know, like especially like those vacuum trucks for some of the pervious pavement? You know, maybe it doesn't make sense for us to invest that much money, but if they're, you know, if we're doing it with U City or somebody else, is there any sort of funding collaboration that can happen for some of these pieces of equipment?
What's tough there is we would probably all be wanting to use it at the same time.
Yeah, it'd be hard.
Leaves fall everywhere, so we'd be trying to call dibs on that equipment, whether it's paving season's open for them and us, or leaves are falling for them or us. I don't know if any type of conversation.
Or maybe, yeah, I mean, maybe that's not a good example, but you know, I know we've talked before about like the sidewalk shaving equipment. In lieu of ripping up a whole sidewalk, you could shave it down so it's level again. I just wonder, yeah, is there any opportunity to do anything like that? Because it seems like there's other innovative things out there, and I just, you know, are we looking for a way? How much time do we spend investigating those and trying to find funding? Because it does seem like there's a lot of stuff we spend a lot of money on, and there's probably a more efficient, more effective, cost-effective alternative out there, but I know it takes time to find it.
It's we are always probably one of the best ones here for keeping his ears open for that type of stuff and evaluating. Usually when people bring up things, and maybe if that's your example as well, where you bring up things, it's something he's either heard about, or if he hasn't heard about it on the rare occasion, it's something he'll research within probably the next day to figure out. So we're absolutely open to innovation, whether it's a city coming to us and talking to us about what they're experiencing and collaborating anything, as well as us finding our own way with new concepts and new practices.
Okay, well, good. Well, I will keep emailing you all
Sure.
things. So look for them, Kent. And then just one last question. Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's a question as well. I mean, as many people know, we've got these taxing districts. So whether it's community improvement districts, SIDS, SBD, special business districts that are an overlay on our already, you know, the general taxes people pay. And those districts often pay for additional street improvements. And so that's why you see some neighborhoods have different striping plans, or they've got different signage, or they've installed, you know, their own delineators. I mean, they've even gone in and done their own painting. And the next week, I know we've had this happen in the Central West End, and then the street gets repaved after that SBD just spent taxpayer money to restripe the street or something. How can we better community? This also just happened, the Hamilton Bridge. You know, we just had some great repairs, and now MSD has all of their major trucks parked on that bridge while they're doing a very important project. But it just seems like we are probably losing money in that we have to keep tearing things open, or we fix something, then immediately there's something else scheduled right afterwards that undoes a lot of that work. How do all of these different things get planned and scheduled so that we are not wasting money?
We're always talking with the utility companies. Last thing we want to do is pave something and have it torn up. A lot of times when you see that happen, it's probably for an emergency repair. I would say very rarely is it something scheduled by Ameren or Spire or MSD that we would just be surprised that they had some major project coming through.
This is
not that it would ever happen. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, it's an MSD
emergency
project, clear. The signs have been up there. We're coming. We're going to repair this. And that was just, you know, yeah, one example. But I don't know, you know, when the SBDs put in a request to do something, whether it's a lighting project or, you know, some striping, you know, they go and they get a permit for it. And I just don't know that that's ever looked at in a calendar of what else is coming. So, I mean, I guess that's just mostly a comment that it would be great to have more coordination there so that nobody's redoing work. And I guess the other thing I would just say about that too is because we do have these special taxing districts in certain parts of the city, it's also leading to a lot of the disparity when you drive from one neighborhood to another, why you see such drastically different quality of streets, of intersections, of ADA ramps, you know, and it would be great for us as a city to figure out how to provide those services equitably, because while I'm really grateful that we have these additional taxing districts that can provide these services when the city can't, you know, I wonder what the long-term goal of that is, because a lot of these taxing districts now feel like they have taken on what would normally be done by the city because our resources are stretched so thin. And it's just going to lead to this very lopsided application of city services and lopsided application of just basic maintenance and capital projects. So, you know, I'm not looking for an answer to that today, but I think it's just something we have to consider in terms of how these are getting done, and having some sort of citywide plan for where are the needs the greatest, where's the funding being applied. And ultimately, I think that's got to be somewhat detached from this word capital. I mean, as Alderwoman Spencer said, we should be spending much more money on this, and relying on aldermanic funds, which are already stretched between so many things, is just not an adequate way to fund all of these really important, necessary, really important needs in our city. So thank you again for your time and for all of your work. And I appreciate everybody working really hard on really thin budgets. So thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. Alderwoman Evans. Oh, shoot, she's not here. I'll never check. Okay, so I saw 3 alderpersons come in and out. If anyone needs to ask a question, please raise your hand. If not, I'm going to move on. Seeing none, what I'd like to do is close out this session.
Madam Chair,
Oh,
I apologize. My hand was raised. Maybe you can't see it.
I can't see it. I'm sorry.
No worries. Do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Please go right ahead. I didn't see you come in. Okay.
Thank you so much. I just had a quick question for you, Jamie, with respect to, I know we had a hiring freeze, but we had worked on the mobility ordinance in construction zones and haven't been able to enforce that or implement it. In this budget, are those positions ready to be filled?
They are. And for those that don't know, that was the addition of a plan examiner and an inspector. So that's the enforcement side. Well, 2 parts. The plan examiner helps us evaluate all the accompanying traffic control plans that come with our street permits. So that position was added in order to facilitate that. And then also on the enforcement side, we got funding through that same initiative to add an inspector. So those are both in our fiscal 22 budget, and both are ready to be filled as soon as we can.
Great. Thank you so much.
For sure.
Okay, thank you. So,
Madam Chair.
go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I want to be respectful here. Just very quickly, Kent, back in 2018, we talked on the Public Utilities Committee about a plan for street repaving that was in coordination with the utilities, so that we weren't repaving streets and then having utilities come through and tear them up immediately and then replace with concrete patches and things. Were we anywhere further down the line about kind of planning those things out, or having a better overarching plan, I guess, as we go forward on these things?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. That kind of got crossed with the 5G initiative. There was a group that was working on the 5G stuff where, was it Dig Once is what they were calling it.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure whatever happened to that. On our side, we haven't changed much at all, other than we do our best to communicate. And every day I talk with Water, every day I talk with Ameren, every day I talk with Spire. Anytime we're paving a street now, like weekly, we've got to where we're sending out a list to at least the major contractors or utilities, just to make sure. I know we've had issues in the past, but I think as Jamie mentioned earlier, if you pave a street today and they happen to find a gas leak tomorrow,
right,
not gonna go fix that. Same thing as a water main break. But just on our end, we've just been doing everything we can to actually communicate that. Like I said, I probably spend no less than like 5 to 10 hours a week just talking with utilities about this job, that job, or some other job.
Sure.
So,
okay. All right. I was just curious. And I know it's also a capacity issue probably to break all of those silos down. And you know, emergency events aside, that's always going to be an issue, but for planning and all of that. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Alderwoman Evans, I see you're back. Did you have any questions?
No questions at this time.
All right, thank you. Director Wilson, I wanted to thank you for being before us today and all your staff members. But I also just want to close. I don't have a question, but what I want to do is, I know that there were a number of new alderpersons listening in, and when they go through their budget process, you'll have an opportunity to talk directly and get a little bit more understanding about these various departments. Also, sharing with the public the understanding of our infrastructure in the city of St. Louis is extremely antiquated. And we're going to see some serious problems in the future, more so than we're dealing with now. And we have a number of different committees, not only on the local level, but on the state and federal level. And infrastructure is a #1 topic right now. And prayerfully, we will have some additional funds coming our way to help with some of it. I'm going to only ask for one thing. And Director Wilson, could you have someone add on to your city website the various agencies that work in conjunction with you? Because you do have, I can think of 3 nonprofits that work on traffic calming, and they work directly with communities and East-West Gateway. So people know and understand all that is involved. And so it would be helpful if you could list those on your city website. What do you think about that?
I'm surprised they may not be on there right now.
I saw some, but not all.
One spot. So I think maybe
Yeah.
to your point, we had some sort of a partners page with a nice list of folks that are doing that. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it just helps. The more information that's available. But I do appreciate your efforts. For most people, if you don't know, Kent understands concrete and asphalt better than most. I think he can smell and tell you when it's going to need repairing. And you do keep us in order. Even when people complain, you'll say, oh, no, this is not ready yet. We can go a couple of more years. So I thank you for that insight. All right. Anything else, sir? Jamie, did you need to close out with anything else?
I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, as we are transitioning to the park, where am I at here? To the Parks Department, Streets and Parks. I wanted to share with you that you will be getting a new schedule. Public safety will be coming back before us for the final 4 departments that they have that need to speak to us. So the board clerk will get that out to you, and it's still going to give you a week notice on when they're coming back. So today it's 10, 15, 16. We still have 2 more departments to come before us. And I'm going to have to be a little more strict, and we're going to have to reduce our time to 5 minutes because I want everybody to be able to ask questions and not say no questions because the time appears to be short. So, Mr. Hayes.
Good morning, Chairwoman, excuse me.
That's okay. So Director Greg Hayes is going to handle everything for the Parks Department and introduce his staff as needed. And I am going to let you go right ahead, sir, and open up.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I will introduce my staff, and I would say it's a privilege to be on the Ways and Means Committee presentation today, and we thank you for your time. On the call, I have, and we'll go, I got your email yesterday, Alderwoman, we're going to go Parks, Recreation, Forestry, and then Soulard Market, Brightside, St. Louis, if you will. And that way I'll just give a brief summary at the beginning. Kim Hagley, Commissioner of Parks, is on the call. Greg Jones and Chris Gedden are in Commissioner Evelyn Rice's stead. She is out on extended leave at this time, so they will, the two of them will assist with that. Alan Jankowski, Commissioner of Forestry, is on the call. Mary Lou Green, Program Manager of Brightside St. Louis, is on the call, as is Kathy Sullivan, our Executive Assistant, who is behind me in our office. So in the past, I've taken an approach of giving a summary of our entire department for sake of brevity, and so information is not lost on myself and anyone else. I'm just going to start with Parks, give a brief summary, and hand it over to myself and Kim Hagley for any and all questions or comments. So if that's okay, Chairwoman.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Parks essentially, it's about a $9.4 million budget. Our department as a whole always hovers around $20 million budget, as all of you know. Essentially 100 permanent person employee table of organization, and we do expand to upwards of 180 employees with seasonal help April through September. We have 110 parks that Kim and her team are responsible for, all the grass cutting, trash cans, et cetera, anything to beautify as best we can and to make these parks safe and popular for our citizens and visitors. I will cut right to the chase in terms of our current situation that we can both expand on. It takes us, and it's a staffing issue, it takes us 75 to 80 limited term utility workers to cut on a 2-week park cycle, which is about 12 to 13 cuts from April to September. This is unprecedented what we are facing now, and I cannot believe the citizen calls are not large in number. We currently have 36 individuals cutting grass in these parks, and we need 75 to 80, which we always get around that number. So we are dealing with something that could become a very significant issue soon with the sun and rain hitting this grass. Cannot believe what our crews are doing to limit the number of concerns from citizens, and we're working overtime, which is unprecedented in parks, 5 days a week and Saturdays if necessary. So that's a staffing issue I want to bring up. And of course, we have across seasonal and permanent vacancies, and Kim can correct me, I believe we have 60 vacancies at present. We cannot get individuals hired for the most part, simply speaking. I will end there with that summary for parks with respect for the alderman and alderwoman's time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and do questions for that department now. Alderman Boyd.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Greg and Kim and Alan and Greg Jones for all the hard work you guys do. Let's talk a little bit about recreation. You know, how are we looking as far as recreational opportunities for citizens this summer with COVID kind of lightening up?
Sure. I just got an update from Greg. I get pretty much every other day updates. I think we're looking pretty good considering the rescission of the health orders just occurred last week. We have 21 contracts in place through a competitive RFP process from 2018. Went very well with private providers working with our own rec center staff members on summer camps and things of that nature. Those contracts were all sent back to us in 2020 because of COVID and restrictions. So what we did in anticipation of the rescission 2 or 3 months ago, we had to redo all the contracts. They had to be different signatures, et cetera. And so we've reached out to those folks. We have some of those folks aligned for this summer. Others said it works better for them in July, August. So we're working with them. We're also trying to get rec assistants hired. Greg and Chris can correct me, but since we're talking about recreation now, we have numerous vacancies. We may have upwards of 35 rec assistants due to the hiring freeze. We haven't been able to get hired. And a lot of that is attributable to police record checks, quite frankly. We just They're not getting them, and it's tough for them to go to the city and county. So our pools are not opening on this coming Memorial Day. So we have concerns there, but we do have programming in place. We're working on that as a work in progress to do the best we can internally and through private providers. And we can provide that information, Alderman Boyd.
Okay.
Greg and
Thank
Chris,
you.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you finished?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me go into, because I want to be respectful of the chairman's 5-minute limit. So on forestry, there's 60 vacancies. What is the challenge with trying to get those vacancies filled?
You mean parks, correct, Alderman?
Okay.
60 vacancies in parks. Parks Department alone.
Oh man, what does forestry look like with cutting out in the community? How many vacancies you have there?
They have vacancies as well. Alan, where are you in terms of seasonal vacancies? Where you should be and what's your number?
Right now we have 30. We want to be up to 70, so we're about 40 short right now. Just on part-time employees.
And what's the challenge to hire more people?
Well, I'll speak first if you don't mind, Alan. Alderman, we're just not getting folks. You can live in Arnold, Granite City, Chesterfield, Wellston. It does not matter for seasonal employment. You don't have to be a city resident. So there's no deterrence there, so to speak, to hiring. We just are not getting the folks coming to us from the personnel department, and perhaps a large degree is because folks aren't applying, but I think a lot of it is we're begging for the list. We host our own job fairs. We've been doing it in our department because our folks are passionate. They want to get employees in place and staff members. We do our own job fairs often, and we have for 2 to 3 years. So I would say the direct answer is we're not getting the names from personnel, and police record checks play a part in it. We also have an inordinate amount of failed drug tests, quite frankly, that we hear about, and you just can't hire somebody who failed a test.
Now, is that test for marijuana or more than marijuana? Do you know?
It runs the gamut, Alderman. I've dealt with random pools and new employee tests for years, and I believe it checks for everything. I'm not a health expert, but it would check for everything, and quite certain that marijuana does knock a lot of folks out of contention, yes.
Yeah, I thought we had lifted that for some reason, and that we wouldn't really focus on the marijuana issue especially when we started kind of not just giving summons to people who had a certain level of possession of marijuana, and in light of where the country seems to be moving toward. I thought a year or two we kind of let up on some of that. That's not true.
Not to my knowledge, unless personnel has a different answer that I am unaware of. We've had those discussions about marijuana, and at the end of the day, we need folks, and we're desperate for folks. So if that helps answer the question.
Okay.
As long as they're not, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can you find out from personnel, if marijuana is excluded from the drug tests?
I most certainly will.
I'd be curious to know. To me, that's such a minor infraction these days that we shouldn't even be looking at that, especially with people having cards, for medicinal purposes. We need to really look at that.
Correct. Is there anyone thank you, Alderman or Alderman. Is there anyone on our team that has specific information to answer that question now? I believe the answer is they do test for marijuana.
They do test for everything. If they have a medical card, then that's a different story. When they go and they have a medical card, or we encourage people, because we've run into this before, if they're on a medication that could sway their drug test, we actually, that's part of our spiel, take that your medicine with you, so that you can tell them up front right there, so it doesn't go back and forth when they test, if they test negative. That way the testing facility knows up front what medication they're taking.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim. And also, we even went to personnel a year or two ago and said, we don't even need folks with a driver's license to work in parks. If they can get somehow to a park, we will hire them without a driver's license. Forestry is a different approach, and we need folks traveling across the city. But if we can get them into a park, we can move them around in that general area of the city. So the driver's license should not be an issue in parks.
The other thing that I would like to add is we hire people, we're hiring them sight unseen. If you can pass the background check and you can pass the drug test, we immediately bring you in to fill out paperwork. So we will take anybody who's willing to work.
Okay, I know forestry is kind of one of those departments that people love to beat up a lot. And it's not your guys' fault. Like you say, you just kind of short-handed oftentimes. I certainly appreciate, all the hard work the forestry workers do. To me, they're put in harm's way more often than any city employee. I mean, they've had to deal with drug dealers, running them away because they have their stash, stashed in high weeds. And it's a tough job dealing with poison ivy in some of these yards. So I just want to say thank you, publicly, that I truly appreciate forestry and the workers and what they have to deal with out in the field. Anything that I can do as an alderman to kind of help you in your process. If you could send me a flyer, I could email it, tweet it, whatever, about employment opportunities there. And I also want to say public, I know I sent you guys this email, but I had an issue in the neighborhood, and it was just a phenomenal job done by the forestry workers when they came over and de-weeded this vacant house that had about 4 feet of grass in the front yard and the back. And it was greatly appreciated. Everybody on the block appreciated it, and we don't say it enough. And so I just, again, want to say thank you, Greg, to their staff and everybody that works with you for the hard work you guys put in for the city of St. Louis. Thank you again. Appreciate your time, Madam Chair.
Alderman, thanks for the kind comments, and I can assure you, every time we receive them from you, they are disseminated to our staff, so thank you.
Alderman Vaccaro?
Yes, I'm here. I will keep it real short. And I know we're extremely short on help. Have you considered on some of the smaller parks, like if they would just provide a larger 1 or 2 riding lawnmowers? I would think that there's citizens, or it's just an insurance problem. In our parks, I would be willing almost to put to bet that the people in the neighborhood might consider cutting the park if they had the proper equipment to do so. I consider cutting it. Get me a tractor. I'm used to that.
Sure. I appreciate those comments, Alderman Vaccaro. Kim, I don't think we've formally pursued that option. I know there could be some liability with non-city employees on city-issued equipment. So that's probably been the hurdle, Alderman, if we've even thought about that. Definitely appreciate the offer, but to my knowledge, we have not explored that. Now in forestry, we have the Mow to Own program, thanks to Alderwoman Spencer and some other folks. And folks really do cut those properties next to theirs, the LRAs. But in parks, I don't know if it's applicable. I don't think it is to date. Kim, do you have any insight?
No, nobody really mows. It's more the flower beds and things of that nature. Park cleanups are wonderful. Picking up the limbs in the park. Several parks do that, neighbors, and we just, when we're in there picking up trash and gonna mow, we pick up the sticks then. All of that helps us do our job better and more quickly.
Right, and I know the Lindenwood group, I mean, not only Antilles both, but they not only pick up, they plant flowers, they do all the landscaping and everything. I mean, they do a good job.
They're unbelievable, Alderman. Craig Strobeck and the folks you put us in touch with, they're a great volunteer partner. Thank you.
Oh, they are, they're good. And, I got to figure out how to keep people from trashing Tilly's Park. Our Pastor Bill seems to be the person picking up about roughly Kim, you see it like what, 6 bags every other day or so, trash bags of trash. And I don't know. And so, I mean, we got good volunteers. Last question, and the splash pad in Tilly's Park that was put in has been broke for 2 years, where we just have to leave the water running. Does that, you know, and I know we're short plumbers, and I know there's a bunch of work being held up in the parks because we don't have an engineer, I guess. This is my understanding. And I guess if we hired that engineer, this is a multiple question, but have we hired the engineer so we can get some of these projects moving? And, you know, again, the splash pad has been lacking a part for ever since it was put in. We really liked the splash pad, but it doesn't, you know, is it that we're lacking a plumber, or I guess, Kim, is that going to get fixed, or Greg?
Yeah, I'll start off and then defer to Kim on the specific issue with the splash pad. With the aforementioned rescission of the health orders, we do have one plumber that handles 110 parks, and he's going around feverishly opening up the splash pads where they are in our parks, opening up the fountains, which is now very important to our citizens. So yes, and in terms of the civil engineer, Kim can correct me, we had a civil engineer one that was removed from our budget last year. Kim has actually dropped that down, I believe, to an engineering tech 2 to try to get someone. But for the last year and a half, Kim has been pretty much a one-person show dealing with Board of Public Service on all capital projects. So it's quite stressful for her. I'll say that for her.
So would it be, but that's what these meetings are about. So would it be something that we need to try to get back put in the budget, or you know, in ways and means? Should we be trying to find the money elsewhere to put that position back? And is it a payment thing? Maybe we need to pay better. What would it take to get that put back together?
Well, Kim, go ahead, Kim, about it, because I believe it is in the July 1 budget at present, or one of those two positions.
It is. I have the engineering tech 2 in this budget. It's important that if you're going to cut a position, that we're at least asked. We could have had, I could have given up something else for that engineering position when that happened. And then I tried getting it back and wasn't able to. And unfortunately, but luckily with COVID, you know, we did not meet as a group for our ward capital meetings. So luckily for me, that slowed the projects down. That still didn't mean that I didn't have things going on with repairs and breakage and emergencies and things like that. But Greg is correct. I have no one to do pre-construction meetings, post-construction, opening things, reviewing plans, in addition to everything that goes on in a day-to-day basis. As far as the spray pad goes, we took the opportunity last year to go through the spray pads and figure out what we needed. So when they bring them up, hopefully they will work correctly, as long as nothing else is like gone on over the winter. So we should be in a better position there when they do open up. The problem with the plumber shortage is they want a licensed plumber, personnel does, but they only want to pay them $35,000, $40,000 a year. And a licensed plumber, you know, in today's market, they're just not going to do it. Then you throw in the residency restriction, which, you know, you could probably get a retired plumber that retired from the union, but is still young enough that wants to have some income. But if he lives outside the city, you can't get that. So I've talked about doing plumber 1, plumber 2, plumber 3s to try and get levels in there so I can get people in. We a lot of times are taking our utility workers and pairing them up with our plumbers and our one electrician to try and give some support there. But technically, they shouldn't be, especially with the electrician, he's not allowed to go out on his own to do anything because he's not trained and he's not licensed. So it's becoming, these 60 positions short are, you're going to start to see some real lack of services. And, you know, you probably already see it with the trimming. The grass will be cut, but around the light poles and the trees, the grass is, you know, shin high, knee high right now. And that we're working 10-hour days. And then we're working Saturdays now to work on the ball fields to try. And I don't want to say get caught up, because that it won't be caught up.
So, well, and Kim, I'll just end with this. So I also got a text from Alderwoman Christine. And I always have trouble pronouncing her last name. I get an S and she gets upset with me. So I'll just leave it at Alderwoman Christine. She said in Fox Park, it's the same problem with the splash pad. They just have to leave it running all the time. So are you saying that in Tillis and Fox Park and places that the problem's already, it's been fixed this winter or this?
We ordered those parts with Alderwoman Ingracia's spray pad. Hers was newer, and so the part was still under warranty. So we got the company to ship us that part. So yes, they should be repaired when they open.
Until Tillis, the parts fixed at Tillis? Well, that's good. That you would think should have been under warranty. That's been like, was put in within the first year. It was messed up the last 2 years. It was just running full time.
I don't know off the top of my head when Tillis was put in. That was put in before I got here. Alderwoman Ingracia's was much newer. It was like the season or two before I got here. So it was closer to that warranty period.
Okay, well, no, that's fine. I'm just happy to hear that that's going to be fixed, or they are fixed. And that was really it. So I mean, just the only budget. So as we're looking for as we're looking for any relief in your budget, is there anything? I mean, the money's there. It's just we can't hire the people, or is there something that you need us to find money to better do something, for something?
I think I'll answer the first, Alderman. Thank you for that opportunity to speak on that. We definitely need the folks. You can't do a citywide job classification at the moment and get it done in a week. So definitely some of these positions are underpaid compared to, I assume, other places in the county, and definitely the private sector. So I think our main emphasis and the crux of the matter is we need folks cutting grass in forestry and parks, the basic services that citizens demand, and they see us out there. The few we have, they see us front and center. We're one of those departments where you're going to know we're there. So that's where we could really use some help. We haven't even spoken about tree trimmers, which I'm sure everybody on the call already knows our story on them and our difficulty. So yes, some funds for grass maintenance. And I did just get a note handed to me from a staff member. Personnel does still test for marijuana and does eliminate for marijuana. So that's confirmation. But yes, any shift of funds at this point in the budget process to grass maintenance, and I believe the hiring freeze has been lifted. Somebody may know. I've gotten different answers. I know some departments have been able to hire. We were not at times. And I just want to hear the hiring freeze is lifted or it's not. And if it is lifted, for everything or partial lift, that'd be great.
Okay. Other than that, I thank you, Kim and Alan both. And Kim has been wonderful. Meets us in the park, even late at night when she should be home eating dinner, because it's the time that the neighbors can meet. And we just love her to death. So I mean, I certainly am not complaining about Kim. We've been able to cry together quite a few times and moan and say, gee, So anyway, and Alan, I know he does the best he can. I get beat up as well as probably everybody else about trees and trees and trees and dead trees. So hopefully we can get a lot of it fixed. I know that the department heads are doing their best, but anyway, I did want to thank, Ellen and Kim especially for her hard work in this. And
Thank you, Alderman. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Howard.
I appreciate all of you signing on today, and I appreciate the hard work you all do. Do we have a breakdown of how many part-time workers there are versus how many full-time workers there are in your departments?
We do, Alderwoman. 5112, not to get into the minutia, the 5112 is the account for forestry and parks. It's not necessarily individual employee oriented. It's just a pool of money. We can get you, I get that almost every other day from Alan and Kim and Evelyn. We can get you that exactly where we are, but it's a pool of money, but we can break it down into numbers. Yes.
Well, it's 219,000. So, but I mean, are we short in both areas, full-time and part-time?
Yes.
So I can answer that for you, Alderman, for the Parks Department. I usually hire 77 seasonal workers that work April through the end of September, sometimes into October. And we've only been able to hire 36.
I got that.
So I have 41 left, and then I have 19 permanent vacancies. Those are HEO ones. Those are the people that drive the trash trucks and the large equipment, utility workers, plumbers, trades helpers, and I have 19 of those. So where it stands today, I have 41 seasonal left to hire, and I have 19 permanent vacancies for a total of 60.
And so the starting pay is?
For the seasonal utility workers for the Parks Department?
Yes.
Utility workers are $15 an hour, and we accept people 16 years of age, and they don't have to have a driver's license. And then we work with them to place them nearest bus lines, their home, so that it's easy on them also to make it to the parks.
I'd say $22.50 an hour in time and a half, which we're currently in, Alderwoman's pretty good pay for handling a string trimmer. That's not bad.
And that's for the full-time employees.
That's for the seasonal utility workers. They're going to make $22.50 an hour with time and a half overtime. 15 an hour, but they get time and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Not bad, but we typically wouldn't do overtime if we had the staff, but that seems to be the need.
So all of your departments are short help, basically, is what you're telling me,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes. Okay.
Yes.
Have you been in communication with personnel to determine if there is a freeze or if what the bottleneck is?
The last I checked was with Linda Thomas. There was a freeze. We were afforded the opportunity to hire. I had a payroll specialist position. You can't just put anybody in payroll, so I did get that approved. But there was a hiring freeze till last I checked. Now Kim is able to hire grass cutters, so that's where I go back to some random positions. But I have not heard that all the positions have been a freeze. Like Alan, or there's still a freeze. Alan, you had X number of tree trimmer vacancies, and you were told at one point by my former supervisor that you could hire 6 or 7, right? So you didn't even get to potentially hire all of them, correct?
Correct. But as far as I know, our tree trimmers, for the last 6 to 8 months, we've been able to hire those. We just haven't had anybody apply.
But we have other positions. Kim has some administrative positions in our office here. She didn't mention, which is fine, but we haven't been able to get those filled. But I just heard recently a few of those have been opened up. I will ask that question, Alderwoman, in an email, point blank. Where are we right now?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 2 or 3 things going on. We've got, pay not being enough, lack of applicants. And even if we have the applicants, are we able to hire them? I guess that's the question. So, and I mean, right now, as you said, with the growing season and all of the activity going on, it's critical that we get people in place. I mean, we're knocking on June's door and, it's critical. So, and budget isn't a problem. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you have the money, you just don't have the people and the manpower.
Right. And in 2019, we were so
Strapped.
hammered. We were hammered without equipment. And finally, there was a push to push parks a little bit up the priority equipment replacement pole. And we got some mowers that we needed for years. And then now we have all the equipment and now we need the folks.
All you do is dust the equipment.
Oh, we'd love to. In parks and forestry, you really don't see equipment sitting in a yard. It's on the street, no matter what it looks like.
And I want to commend your department on being able to get by on what you've been getting by on. You've been responsive as much as I see you can be. But I think that, our taxpayers deserve more and better service. And, we need to get these people in the door and get them hired. I know that there's a lacking of personnel in all industries and all areas. We don't have the people that want to come out to work. So, and I don't know where that problem is, but hopefully we can get this resolved. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. And that's all I have. I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we are definitely not on an island. I know restaurants are shutting down because they can't get staff. So we don't want to do any unnecessary whining. We just need to let you know the facts, especially if it gets worse here soon.
Thank you. Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a couple questions. The first one right off the bat, Greg, you said that the pools aren't going to open this weekend. Is that right?
That's correct, Alderwoman. We're feverishly working on that with personnel as well. I will give you an update as of 9 this morning. It takes us, we need 40 lifeguards and lifeguard supervisors combined. We need 40 folks to effectively, safely manage our 7 pools, 3 outdoor, 4 indoor. Right now, we've been talking about lifeguards with personnel since probably November.
Yeah.
And there is a shortage in the region, but we need 40. We have 19 right now. I'm in constant discussions with my supervisor and Evelyn. Well, Evelyn's out now, but our team, and that's where we are. Now we're getting a few more names apparently from personnel, but I'm even exploring an emergency contract with a company we have dealt with before to see what their resource capacity is to help us. They've even told us in the past, Alderwoman, that they would retain all of our current employees and still manage our pools for us. But that did not get anywhere when I proposed it about a year and a half ago.
Okay. I know that the community down here has a pool party scheduled for this weekend. And so this is the first I've heard that that's not on schedule. Are the folks involved in planning that event aware of this change?
I've seen a few pool parties, I believe, with the Dutchtown South group, if that's the same one. We had a couple in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not specifically familiar with the one this weekend. Greg and Chris, because if that's on schedule or it's to be scheduled, we can find some way to make that happen, Alderwoman, because we wait till the last minute purposely. All 3 pools have been passed the inspection this week. Marquette, Fairgrounds, and Chambers. They are all ready to go. Greg and Chris, can you provide some insight on this, please?
Yes, sir. So we're set to open Marquette this weekend. That is our goal, and we're really pushing hard toward it, even if we have to pull from other areas. That's still on. And we got the deck furniture done last Sunday. So Marquette is still a go. And we're really pushing hard to make it.
But Mark, let me jump in. Marquette is a go in terms of staffing lifeguards for this party, but
Yes.
Marquette is not a go to open as an outdoor pool as we need with all three, correct?
Yes, sir.
We can't open just Marquette pool. I'd love to. It's very popular, but we need to open all three of our pools, and we're working every day to try to get these lifeguards. We're in constant contact with personnel.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what is the pay on that?
$15 an hour also. And a lifeguard supervisor, I have never understood the distinction. What do they make, Greg, Chris, 10 cents more, 15.10 or 15.20?
For what?
Oh, yeah, for the lifeguard supervisor.
Okay. Okay.
And I know it's not what you want to hear, Alderman. We're trying, like I said,
No, I understand. I just want to make sure that we're communicating with the folks involved.
Sure.
Real quickly, on the Parks and Rec funding, I'm looking at, and this gets a little bit confusing, page 96. So the Parks and Rec, the programming, page 96 on Parks and Rec Center programs, the funding has gone down significantly from 2021, 2022, 277,000 to 199.
I am on page 96. Do you know the account number offhand, Alderwoman? Off to the left?
I mean, I'm looking at the total there for personal services, just like on the fund 1122. The funds are going down significantly. I'm just curious, is this for Parks and Recs total? It gets a little bit confusing because there's additional funds for the Division of Recreation. So we have the Director of Parks and the Parks and Recreation Programs. Is that under Evelyn Rice Peebles?
The 1122 those are funds that came out of the BJC lease and upwards of a max of 400,000 in the past, upwards came out of the Playtime Rec, which now we're all one programming. But that is out of the BJC lease, and those programs are under me, so to speak, the director. The staffing is under Evelyn, if that helps. It is a little confusing.
Okay, but so where is those going?
Those funds those are for programming throughout the year, and especially in the summer, the 1122.
So that's throughout the city, Greg?
Right. And that's the figure I'm looking at is 270 for 5651. That's programming for private providers, correct,
Okay.
Greg? And
Well,
Chris?
so like if I look at that whole fund, right, I got 1.2 going from 1.3 million to 1.2 million essentially. And then if I flip over to 101, I've got another Division of Recreation going from 1.2 to 1.4. What are the differences between those two, like the Parks and Rec versus the Division of Rec?
I'm not sure I'm not sure
looking
your
at, like,
first number.
The budget is, there's a lot of information in here, but it's not always infinitely clear what all these, how these things work together.
Right.
So I've got Fund 1122, which is the Director of Parks and Rec Center program. And then I've got the Fund 1010, which is the Division of Recreation. And
Right.
so what I'm trying to better understand is what is the total amount of funding that we put into recreation. I know we've got Playtime Rec and then we've got the regular rec, and I don't understand why we need to have those two. Why we separate them out, and is that what's going on here? Is that the difference between those two? Where's Playtime Rec in here?
Yes, Playtime Rec is under the 1122 and it is established by ordinance where it would not be funded under the Recreation Division. That's what I learned when I took this position. So 1122 is funded out of the director's office, and that's how it was set up, and that's how it stayed. Arguably, it could be all under one recreation, but that's by ordinance, if that makes sense to you. 1122, yes, is directed by ordinance to be under the director's office.
So we have two recreation departments, essentially, one under your office and one under Evelyn Rice Peebles, correct?
I would say we have one, but the funding sources are two that recreation runs. It's just under me, but I don't manage the programming, if that makes sense. Evelyn does with her team.
So Evelyn manages both sides.
Correct. Any programming done is not managed by me, but it's Evelyn managing it under me, if that makes sense. I know it's confusing because we quit using the term playtime rec that used to be run by Alicia Stellhorn. She's no longer here. And I said, we have 2 funding sources for programming, but we're one recreation division.
Okay. So maybe is that Greg, this is the first I really am understanding about how that funding has been historically directed, that ordinance you referenced. Is that something we need to revisit?
We certainly could if legally we're allowed to, Alderwoman. I could certainly look into it. But yes, some folks will say, well, you got to count 5651 here, and then we have the other account. And so are they the same or different? They're different, but it's all programming, if that makes sense.
Okay,
and
Alderwoman Spencer, can I just intervene for a second? I need to ask Paul Payne to clarify this. An ordinance was passed, additional taxes are collected, and it was for programming, additional programming for recreation. And it was ordered to go under the director, but the director has the clarity to identify who's going to actually implement. And so Evelyn does implement. So the recreation department is one, but you have another pot of programming money. So Paul, do you mind clarifying that even better than I could ever do?
Well, actually, you did pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah, that source has Fund 1122, as Greg mentioned, is established by ordinance, and so the setup, unfortunately, as you mentioned in this budget, there are a number of those types of incidents where you have an ordinance which says these monies shall go to this location or this place, and that's how, for better or worse, that's how we have to budget it that way. Now there are combined schedules in the overall annual operating plan book that we have. If you look at those, those will bring them all under one roof. But in this instance, you've got recreation money that's budgeted under the director's office for that purpose. But
okay, yeah, I was just wanted to see the total budget for rec and see if it's kind of compare apples to apples. It looked like it was going down, but then the other side's going up. So I'm assuming we're just kind of staying even with that. Is that more or less a better understanding if we were to look at it more holistically there, Greg?
Yes, I would say.
Or Paul, sorry. I mean, is it, I'm just trying to understand our investment as a community and the recreational programs and seeing if there's consistency there.
It looks like under Fund 1122, you had 2 fewer positions budgeted under that fund. That may
yes.
Yeah.
2 fewer?
2 fewer. So 2 positions. So that looks like just a reduction in the Fund 1122, and that's what that would be. And then in recreation on the 1010 side, you've got just the regular increase. Like that's a couple $100,000 there, reflecting just normal increases, fringes, and things like that.
So, is there any reason for a reduction in recreational staff? Or what's the reason behind that?
That's a great question. Greg, was that, and I apologize on that detail, was that a shift to the other funding source, so to speak, the 1010, or can you allude to that? I know there was a decision made on that with the TO.
Yes, part of it was when playtime recreation sort of went away, we kind of combined some duties of other people. So that was put on the 1010 side. And the other part is we had some reduction in staff because there were just positions we couldn't get filled, and that they were already being duplicated with the rest of the recreation. So we're actually saving money to put it back into programming.
I just know that our programming is so impactful, and we're talking about ways of, reducing crime and, coming at it from a root cause perspective and investing in our kids, through programming in our rec centers is such an effective way of keeping those kids, constructive and busy and doing things that are, healthy and fun. And, cutting those funds for recreation, cutting those positions, does the opposite of that. And you know,
Alderwoman Spencer, I'm gonna have to break in again because the cutting of those two positions actually does not affect having less, because currently we actually have more, because there are more professional entities providing additional services for different types of recreation programming. And it is a phenomenal job that they have done as far as identifying these entities and having these available for communities to select to have operating in there, not only in our parks, but in our recreation centers and other places that we have space. So we really didn't lose anything because the programming is already there and being provided by professionals in a on a larger scale than what those two positions would have been able to do. And also a lot of those duties had already been put in other positions in order to help monitor the long list of professional organizations that are providing great services and programming. And I commend Greg and all your staff, because I get excited when I look at the list and I hear the passion from Evelyn about this process and what we have accomplished. So thank you. Go right ahead, Alderwoman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Greg, in other words, the funding for recreation is adequate for you and hasn't changed? I mean, I was a little bit confused by that, but.
Yes, sorry, Alderwoman. I would say we're very well funded in the programming side. And it really hurt us last year to know we have the ample funds, but we couldn't do programming. So the money sits, and some of that money, as Paul knows, does roll over. So our goal is to spend it. We also, I digress, but I attended a phenomenal event at Cardinal Ritter Saturday morning for New Dimension Soccer. My point there is we're always looking for events, not just to say we're spending money so we can prove it, but to better our programming. And we're not going to sit on these 21, as Alderwoman Davis identified, these 21 providers. I'm in favor now at this point, 3 years later, of opening up a new RFP and getting more and more innovative programming instead of sitting with these 21 great reputable organizations. But we need to spend I'd rather say every year we have zero balance in those accounts. And that's going to your point about programming. And hopefully I'm not sounding facetious. I mean it sincerely.
I'm sure you do, and I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea. And I wanted to just mention as well, we have so many great organizations we fund through Prop S. Many, those are organizations that focus on youth, and so developing partnerships with our recreation and our parks facilities with those organizations, I think, is a really is an opportunity to kind of double up, if you will, on the community benefit of the funds and the resources that we have.
I agree. And you're a big supporter of Marquette Rec Center, and we appreciate it because you've introduced us to some folks who are great partners.
We have great community support there, and I'm really grateful for all the community advocates and those folks who are pushing for changes, positive changes. Lastly, I want to talk about public safety, the safety in our parks. I'm curious, Greg, if we've done any analytics on the amount of crime, criminal activity, and things like that in our parks. I hear about these things, and from members of the community on a regular basis. Shootings, stabbings, overdosing, things like this going on in our parks, and want to know what our plan for improving public safety, particularly in these publicly owned public spaces, I think should be a priority for our city. Investing in infrastructure that can help combat that. I do think there's reason to be cautious about throwing cameras everywhere, but in public spaces like parks, I think it can make sense. We've done that in Gravway Park and looking for other opportunities, but want to hear a little bit about, push for more park rangers and a more focus on making those public spaces safer for all.
Sure. Absolutely, Alderwoman. Well, I think the first part, my first answer is, to my knowledge, well, not to my knowledge, I know our department has not conducted any type of formal analytical study in terms of crime and any compromises to public safety in our parks. I can tell you that. Does not mean wouldn't be a fruitful effort. It would be a great thing. Coincidentally, Kim and I were on a call with the alderman of the 21st about O'Fallon Park, talking about these very same things, the unnecessary problems in that park. And I don't want to pick on O'Fallon Park. It's one of our beautiful 5 regional parks, but we are in constant conversations, not exaggerating, with the police department and the rangers. I don't know what the park rangers TO is as of today, but they've been traditionally understaffed the last few years. We deal with Lieutenant Amy Parker Staten frequently. A lot of times we hear about park issues, which are, whether it's heinous or more minor things that are nuisances randomly, but we do hear from them through our communication with them. So I think it's a valid point. Maybe we should be a little more formal and collective in coming up with some ideas of the parks in our city, especially where we're experiencing incessant problems, but nothing formal to date. But we do work closely with the park rangers. As you know, they are supervised by Chief John Hayden and not myself like it used to be. But no formal studies and just mostly random alerts, if you will.
Yeah, I feel that as well. I mean, I see that's my experience, just kind of hearing from it anecdotally, but I do think there would be value in keeping track of that type of information, particularly the parks that are experiencing, specific parts of the park, so that we can focus on those publicly owned public spaces that should be, serving our kids and our families safely.
I agree. I've never understood how there could be any disrespect for a city public park, but we see it in pockets in different places, and no park in our city is immune from something like that happening, especially a crime, which really gets our attention.
So, and I'll just expand a little bit from park rangers and also talk about traffic enforcement and other ways of improving safety in and around our parks. I know that there's a lot of traffic enforcement in Forest Park, but there doesn't tend to be that same level of attention to vehicular traffic and making it safe to get in and out of our other city parks. Thank you for your service. Our parks are jewels of our city. They're some of my most favorite and treasured places within our city. So thank you all for your service. And I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your support.
Alderman Muhammad. Are you still muted?
Chair.
Your audio is
Mr.
still.
Director, has there been any conversation with the police department?
I'm sorry, I could not pick that up, Alderman. I'm not sure if someone else heard the question.
He was mainly asking, is there any coordination with the police department on safety?
Yes, often. I hope I'm answering your question, but yes, unless there's a specific reference.
He also just put in a chat asking if there's any conversation about putting the park rangers back under the Parks Department.
To my knowledge, no, there has not. It was broached a few years ago, perhaps in Ways and Means, and there has not been that discussion.
Okay. Alderman Muhammad, did you have any other questions?
I just saw in the chat, Alderman Muhammad asked, what is your opinion on that, Director? My opinion in the past is I don't want to be, how do I put it, cavalier and say I or my position, whoever's in it, would do a better job than the police department. I personally think where it is fine. If we sent them back to us, I think that's saying the police department hasn't done a good job. I think they have. It's just the staffing deficiencies. if there's a more formal conversation that needs to be had, especially with the police saying we would like to relinquish, so to speak, the park rangers back to the purview of the park division, we would certainly entertain that. The way I have looked at it to hopefully answer the question is park rangers, albeit their enforcement capabilities are very limited in my opinion. I've tried to work with the city councilors to help them. I do feel they are still law enforcement, and they can and should be in the police department, but they could also arguably be with us. There's other municipalities that have park rangers in their park division. So I don't want to sound indifferent, but it'd just be a case of would they be better here, and we could have further discussions. If I will say commentary, if Alderman Collins Muhammad thinks we do a better job, at least it's a nice comment to us.
All right, thank you, sir. We're moving on to Alderwoman Navarro.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Greg, and everyone from the Parks, Forestry, Recreation for being here this morning, and thank you for all that you do. We saw especially how important our parks were last year. I think they're always super important, but it was nice to see so many appreciating them this last year during COVID. I just have a couple of questions. One, just going back to mowing, it's my understanding in addition to all those parks, the Parks Department is also the department that mows the medians and any other public rights of way. Is that correct? I see Kim.
Yes, we mow, Alderwoman, we mow all the grass medians. Forestry handles what we call dislocated easements, which are basically concrete, kind of a little odd dislocated areas. But yeah, you see it. Perfect example, Delmar and Hampton down by Columbia. Those would be examples of parks mowing. Correct, Kim?
Yeah, we also do miscellaneous cul-de-sacs and just the police stations, the fire department, just whatever anybody doesn't mow, we mow. We just acquired a median down on Broadway, I understand. I was not even aware of it. It has rain gardens, and I have not been by there yet. Supposedly it's very beautiful, a lot of money put into it, and I'm being very honest here, my first thought was, how am I going to maintain this? So we do mow about an additional 300 to 400 acres of land that includes all those medians and miscellaneous parcels and things like that.
Yeah, thank you for describing that, because I know it's something that's come up, and I'm glad you mentioned the rain gardens too. As somebody who's a big proponent of rain gardens and planting native species, I completely understand the additional burden that puts on the Parks Department. That's where that maintenance lands. And I would love for us to find a way, to tap into other resources, because I think if we can reduce the amount of area that we're mowing, that would be great. There's all sorts of benefits to not having this manicured green lawn. And not with something, not with concrete, but, whether that is gardens or farms or, whatever it would be. But I understand it takes people to maintain. And there is definitely a growing interest in the whole sector. I mean, green collar jobs is a term that's out there now, because native plants are becoming such a big deal. Rainscaping is becoming such a big deal that there are more and more people out there who are getting trained. And I almost wonder, if we could partner up with like MSD, who has millions of dollars they need. Oh, Kim's laughing already, but they have millions of dollars that are to be spent on green infrastructure. And, is there a way there, or is there some job training that can happen? And I'm sure you've looked into a lot of these, but I just think that's an area that if we can, I think in the long run, it would be more beneficial if you all didn't have so much to mow. And if there was a way, so I don't know, Kim, with that laugh, I don't know, is there an opportunity for some sort of collaboration to pull on other resources to maintain these spaces in a different way?
So when I hear MSD and I hear BMP and I hear rain garden, I cringe. Because I don't have that civil engineer, the engineering tech 2 position, I am behind on my, there's a report that goes along with every one of those rain gardens that we do. And a report has to be submitted annually to MSD for those. So to move forward and continue to put more of these in without what you call green collar staffing, I wouldn't mind taking it on. And I think it's probably the way we're headed, but I need greenhouse staff then, people that can identify a plant from a weed. It's not about training my mowing and trimming staff. Like my park maintenance manager said, he says, we make tall grass, low grass. And that's the extent of their capabilities. And I'm not diminishing them in any way because they're a huge part of my department. And, you know, I support them 100%, but you cannot take a gentleman who's turf and grass that's already shorthanded and try and teach them how to do weeds from woodies or prairie. I will say this, we do have 2 partners, Pop-Up Prairie. Lee Harris has done a phenomenal job at Tillis Park. We have 2 open prairie areas, and we work very closely with her, our mowing foreman there and our park maintenance manager to help her out in any way. We mow when she tells us to mow. We mow at the height she tells us to mow. We have sectioned off, you can see it from Hampton area. We help her kill the grass so that she can plant. So we work hand in hand with people like that. The other big one is Missouri Department of Conservation. We took a whole section of O'Fallon and did that, a huge hill along the highway that was very dangerous for us to cut, and they are turning that into prairie. You all may know we did have one of our staff members pass away due to a mowing accident, and so we're no longer willing to take those chances. So there are areas that you will see that have tall grass on hills, and that's where we're working with MDC to get those prairies installed so that we don't have to mow them. And the other place they're looking at is along River to Pear. So they've been great partners in all of this, but to put in more grass medians, and I know it looks nicer. And believe me, if I had the staff, I'd be back at 100%. But this one on Broadway has angled hills that go down into a rain garden at the bottom. It's going to be a problem for us to mow, to trim, to keep trash out of the rain garden. It could be even a problem for Alan with maintenance of tree trimming. So I just think we need to look at the resources that we have with manpower before we continue to invest money in green infrastructure if we don't have the people that can maintain it. Otherwise, it just ends up looking bad, and all the money we've invested is all for naught. So that's just my soapbox there. Thank you.
I appreciate that perspective, and I think it speaks to the need for greater collaboration too, because a lot of these green infrastructure projects are to help alleviate issues that come up with water or streets or all of these other things. And, you know, we need somebody who's going to look at this big picture and say, you know, an investment in this area isn't just a big dollar sign for this department, but overall it means we're saving money over here. But I understand, like, to have it piecemealed out like this and doesn't necessarily work. But I would really hope that, I mean, these issues are going to become more and more important to us as a city as we see more precipitation, more rain, as we see higher temperatures, as, you know, the plants that we're used to growing can't grow here anymore. I mean, all of these things are coming to a head with climate change, and there's definitely a push for more green infrastructure. And so we as a city have got to figure out how to do that. And I completely hear you that we are not in a position to take that all on right now. We're not there yet. And, you know, so anything I can do to advocate to get us there, I'm definitely on board. So thank you, because that is the information that I think we need to be able to get over these hurdles and do these things really, really well. I think the only other thing I wanted to ask about was, I guess I've got a question for, I guess maybe it's for Alan. I know last year we contracted out a bunch of forestry. So I think it was last year. It's hard. The timing is a little wonky in my head with COVID, but I remember we were hiring private contractors to help us get up to speed on the backlog with some of the tree trimming and tree removals. Can you share an update, or are we still doing that? How much did we spend on that? What did we get out of that effort?
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, so we took down, we had $1 million, so we've taken out about $900,000. The contractor's still out there cutting trees down. That contract goes for 5 years, but I guess it's probably been about 1.5 years we've been into that contract already, but we're running low on those funds, so that will be coming to an end because of the funding will be out of money at that point. So they kept us kind of in par with the amount of trees that have come in. So with our crews out there removing trees and the other crew, we've kind of maintained, I guess, an equilibrium amount of trees coming in as removals as the ones going out. So, but like I said, that will be coming to an end as the $1 million will be gone probably within the next couple months.
And where did the $1 million come from?
This is Greg weighing in. Thanks to Mr. Payne and several others.
Is anybody else hearing Greg come through like some sort of Darth Vader cave?
Is that all right now?
No.
I don't know what happened. It sounds like your microphone, something happened with your microphone.
Sounds like something's laying over it or something. I don't know.
How is that? Better?
No.
Any better? I don't know what happened. I don't think I touched anything.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Well, I mean, you can try. We can see if we can make it out.
Greg, if you can hear me, you can just come use our mic.
I am going to do that. I can literally get there pretty quick for my size.
Okay, thanks. Well, and maybe
do you have another question for me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about where we were with the ash removals.
The ash removals, so it wasn't funded last year. We had usually about $550,000 we would put toward treating of ash, and then we would remove ash as well. And that wasn't funded last year. There was some leftover money, but we're still doing that as that contractor's out there removing hazardous trees. If they come across an ash tree, they'll remove that one, and we'll put it on that, put it out of the ash budget. But hopefully it will get funded this year, and we'll start removing ash as well. We still have about 10,000 ash that we need to get down off of our streets. Not all of those are hazard at this time, but knowing the emerald ash borer and the infestation rates are still climbing, we see that there'll be hazard trees within the near future. So we're trying to still tackle them as much as possible. Rather than prune, we just cut them down, as we know they're going to be a hazard down the road.
And is that 550,000 in the budget this year?
Yes, it
Each
is.
year.
Okay.
I was going to jump in, Alan. This
Yeah.
is Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is funded $550,000 in this year's capital budget.
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, I feel like I do remember that in our general overview. So,
Heather, may I follow up?
yeah, sorry,
Thank
Greg. I was just asking about the ash removals while you.
Sure. And I hope I'm not redundant when I walked over here. So I just want to say that thanks to Paul Payne and the rest of the Capital Committee, we did a presentation to say that we were in dire need of tree removals in the city. We're not talking about the 10 to 12 inch diameter. We're talking 32 and above. Thanks to the Capital Committee, we got to spend $1 million, which we're still spending down. We're almost there, but it was Capital Committee funds. And with the lack of tree trimmers being 10 or 11 short out of 27 or 28, I think we're going to be in that same position if Alan didn't already say it. And I did let the new administration know with the $517 million, we were asked to provide departmental needs, and that was one of them for us, if in fact those funds can be spent on private tree removals, or excuse me, private organizations handling our city tree removals.
Okay, great. Thank you. And do we have I know at one point there was like a tree canopy survey and you could go online and you could see the, where city trees are. And I don't know, is that still being maintained? And then do we have any sort of plan for, what gaps we want to fill in, or is it all just kind of based on aldermanic and resident requests in terms of where we're planting?
Sure. Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a stratum study we did years ago with either I think it was Davy Tree, which was great, which showed our canopy coverage in the city of St. Louis and what that percentage was and what we strive to get to the higher percentage. I don't have that specific information, Alderwoman, but we do have inventories that were done by Davy and all 28 wards, and we update them with removals and planting. I wouldn't call it totally scientific, but it could give an alder person the information they need. You may have seen it from the 28th years ago, but Alan, can you shed a little more light on that, especially with City Works, which we use to do our service requests?
Yeah, so a nice thing we've implemented this past year. Am I on? Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
So we have our arborists out there. They have tablets in their hands. And now that we are out there, when we do an inspection, they're daily out there updating that inventory. So we're instead of an old inventory that maybe we update monthly on removals and trims, we're out there updating it as it's in City Works live time, and which is really nice. So we have five tablets out there daily updating our inventory. And as we progress in the future, we're going to put these tablets in our foreman's hands as well. And they'll be able to update that inventory. Heather, we can give you an inventory of your ward. We can kind of pull it down, however, and send it to you so you can see exactly what trees are in your ward, how many are trees of different species, and then see maybe where some gaps are, where maybe we need to fill in. And then
Can
as
we
far
get
as
that for everyone, for all wards?
Yes. I don't see why that would be a problem. I'll have to work with IT. I'm not that good at that, but we'll get that out for all wards. And I know East West Gateway is working on a new tree canopy layer that I don't know how they do it with some type of resolution that some satellite photoing that will hopefully there'll be an updated one here in the next year or two that they're working on.
Great. Well, thank you.
And I had one more with the tree, with the $1 million of the hazard tree removals. Up to date, we spent $911,000, and then we've removed 1,880 trees for that out of that $900. So just to kind of give you some figures.
And please know that when we did the process, these are hazard trees that folks are thankful to get out. And the most significant thing is this contractor is terrific. I'm biased, but he's terrific to deal with. And they were about 50 cents on the dollar compared to the other bids we got. So quite a big bang for the buck.
Great. That's really good. And so when that fund is, once you've gone through that million, are you going back to the capital committee to see, is that where you would seek more funds to finish out that 5-year contract?
I'm smiling if Paul Payne allows us to talk to him.
I'll jump in there real quick. Yeah, if you recall, that was the year in which we had that surplus. So we had additional monies that came to capital, and so part of that allocation involved some of the trees. Obviously, if that occurs again, then we might have that to look. And as Greg mentioned, as you get down the road and you start deliberating on this additional monies coming from the federal assistance program, that it would also be something to consider.
Yeah, I think that would make a ton of sense, because I know that, there are certain areas of the city that we want to be investing in, and a healthy tree canopy is, and I know, Greg and Kim and Alan, you all know this. It's linked to better health outcomes. There's a correlation with better security, lower crime, less anxiety, better mental health outcomes. I mean, lower utility bills when you've got shade. I mean, just all sorts of things, better water absorption, so less overflowing of our combined sewer system. I mean, just so many wonderful things that we get when we have a healthy tree canopy. So I think that would be a fabulous investment. So I think Paul should entertain your request, Greg, and make sure you get that meeting.
Thank you. Yeah. Zero net loss is our goal.
And then I just went to the job postings page because I know, I mean, we've been hearing this from every department, you know, it's so hard to get people. And maybe this is something for personnel, but if I were somebody who heard this today and said, oh, I want to go apply to the Parks Department, it is not easy. You get a list of all of these different categories of jobs. You don't necessarily know what department they're in. It's not easy at all, I find, to navigate that. If you want to work for those city parks department, you eventually end up at this link and you've got to decide what level plumber you are or what this is, or, you know, I mean, utility worker can mean a whole bunch of different things. So, I mean, I guess, I mean, maybe that is directed to the personnel department, but for whoever can do anything about that, I would just say it seems, I'm grateful there are job fairs going on, but I don't think we make it easy for people to apply.
To be fair and candid, Heather, we do receive some of those same concerns and complaints, and we don't just say, oh, call 622-4300 or 4308, but it is difficult. Some of the folks we want to employ may not have quick access to computers either. And to my knowledge, some of my team can correct me, but I don't believe anybody is allowed to go to the Carnahan building to apply in person. So you've lost a good, and correct me folks, you've lost a good segment of your applicant pool who aren't just going to be on the computer every day. And if in fact they are, and they are afforded the opportunity to be on a computer, it may not be user friendly. So I'm not out there looking at that very often, but we get some of those concerns, and people are coming to our office for a few months now. I don't know what's going on at Carnahan.
So what we've been doing to try and ease that, because our understanding is, used to be when you went to the police department to get your background check, they would give it to you right there, and they no longer do that. I don't know if that's because of COVID, so they mail it to you. So when you get online, it doesn't even tell you that you need a background check. And so what happens is you fill out the application online, and then personnel sends you a letter in the mail that says, hey, you need a background check, here's all the information. Then you go get the background check, and because you can't take it down there, you got to mail it in. And then, so it's a long drawn out process. So what we've been doing is we're telling people, bring us your background checks. We actually contacted personnel and said, hey, we know you got to have a list out there of people that have applied. Can we call them? And so we called 60 people off of that limited term utility work list. And my secretary was telling people, here's what you got to do. Here's where you got to go. Here, when you get it, bring it back to me. And so they were bringing it back to the park department, and we were stuffing them in the inner office mail envelopes, and we were taking them to the Carnahan building so that we could speed up that process.
Unreal.
So,
Unreal, and I commend you. It's unbelievable that we're doing.
So we're jumping. We're doing more than just job fairs to help people along. We have actually been handing out these applications to people that are coming in to fill out applications. We are giving them another application and saying, here, do you have a friend somewhere that needs an application? I will say too, we have been working with Slate, and we've gotten 2 people from Slate this week.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry, I don't mean to, but you know, we are way behind schedule, Madam Chair.
I can concur with you. And one of the things I'm going to have to share, I just got, I'm off my schedule too. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we can have our Public Employees Committee handle some of these things, because I am totally frustrated with personnel. And I could talk 3 hours about it. We are not doing the city a good service. So can we just deal with specific budget numbers that you may have concern about? And Madam Vice Chair, I'm going to quietly leave the meeting at about 11:45, and I need you to take over, okay?
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
So in your Google Drive, you will find the list to call on, and
got
you will, and the last department that's coming before us is the health department with Dr. Eccles. And I'll finish the last two alderpersons here and close out this session, and then I'll quietly leave and you can bring in Dr. Eccles, okay?
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Alderwoman Navarro, you wanted to wrap up?
Yes, yeah, I don't have any further questions. I just want to say thank you again. And I know that Forest Park Forever gets a lot of the credit for Forest Park itself. And I know there are a lot of city workers, Parks Department workers, forestry folks who help keep that place looking wonderful. And I just want to make sure that you all know that we appreciate them so much. Even though I know a lot of that praise gets directed elsewhere. So thank you so much to all of you. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Evans. Okay. I don't see her. Okay, there are a few alderpersons that are still online that are not on the committee. But what I want to say is I appreciate watching you all ask questions and give answers to supplement in the chat. And I would encourage you to continue to do that. And if you have any questions that you still need to have answered, would you please send them to the department heads through the chat. I also wanted to just quickly say to you, Greg, I do appreciate all that has been done over the years in trying to make sure that we have so much accomplished with so little. And it's very difficult, but we do manage to get a lot done. I did see in the chat that we really hadn't talked about Brightside. And if you would like to, I'm looking here at your list. If you would like to talk a little bit about Brightside quickly, and I wanted to share with you that I think it's important that we go back to hiring small contractors to help you cut all this. It's just too much. And some of them, when we had them a couple of years ago, they were doing really good work. They were taking time to trim good and everything. So you might want to look at that again. And also anywhere you can supplement, if you got the funds sitting there because you weren't able to hire, use those funds and get you some help. You all are just working so hard and there's so much to be done. So would you like to have a few words to say about Brightside?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Davis. I really appreciate the comments, but all credit to our staff. Brightside, Mary Lou Green's on the call, I think still, basically a federally funded CDBG program, but we do have, a few years ago, we moved a few of her folks in the recycling section under the director's budget, as you'll see a couple positions. They beautify in the city. They handle over 4,000 graffiti removal services, which the citizens and property owners appreciate it because they didn't ask for the graffiti. I'll stop there. They're essentially about $325,000 budget, if you will. Mary Lou, do you have anything to add? And it's your time to boast, of course. Either she's humble or she's got audio problems.
No, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our graffiti removal program has been very successful. We're continuing to work with neighborhood groups, whether it's a block or an entire neighborhood association, to clean up neighborhoods. And so far this year, we've supported well over 100 neighborhood projects and people cleaning up their neighborhoods. So that's what we do. And anytime you need us, you know, you can count on us.
All right.
Chairwoman,
Yes, sir.
I have one self-serving comment to make for our department. The last section is Soulard Market. Kathy Sullivan does a great job as our liaison. Our Soulard Market manager just left city service. He was here 8 years, did a great job. So please, if there's anyone interested, Soulard Market manager is posted with personnel. It's essentially a Wednesday through Saturday job with really unique position. We need to fill it because we're moving people from other divisions down there to try to make do. So self-serving, but it'd be a great job. We'd be happy to talk to any prospective candidate about. And thank you again. Hopefully we didn't go on too long here with some of these answers.
No, you didn't. But I'm going to look up that job description and I'm going to try to get it out to some folks for you.
Thank you.
Did Kathy have anything specific she needed to say?
She has declined that, but she said
Okay.
she says thank you very much for your time, as do we.
All right, thank you. So for that, I wanted to just share that if you have any opportunities to share information with us, the more you share, the more we can help in any way possible. And we wanted to just say thank you again for all that takes place. What you do on behalf of the city is so critical to the residents. If you could only hear them all the time, and they love their parks, they love them. And Terry Park had 4 birthday parties going on this past Saturday. It was gorgeous watching all of that take place, and we want our residents to have those opportunities. So thank you very much. I am going to say to the next group that is coming up that co-chairwoman Carol Howard will be conducting the session for the health department. So thank you.
And I hope everybody has a great, safe holiday week and enjoy.
Yes. All right. So Alderwoman Howard, you
Yes,
can go ahead and take
Madam
over. And I'm going to quietly leave with hello, thank you, and letting Dr. Eccles know how much we appreciate all that he has been leading and consulting on during this pandemic. And because I work with community outreach with a number of the hospitals, you are well respected among that health community. Thank you. And you all have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Okay, Dr. Eccles, are you on?
I am.
Okay, good afternoon, or no, good morning.
Good morning.
I would appreciate at this point introducing you, and if you could introduce the staff you brought along with you. Are they on also?
Yes, they are. So from the health department, we have myself, Fred Eccles, the acting director of health for the city. And we have the fiscal manager for the department, Mr. Emmanuel Kani, and the accounting supervisor, Ms. Beverly Murray, who will be providing any additional information that we may need as it relates to our budget discussion today.
Good morning, neighbor Murray. How are you? You're muted, dear.
Yes, I'm doing great.
Good.
Can you hear me now?
I
Okay.
can. All right.
Okay.
And where is there the other person you introduced? I'm sorry.
Mr. Emmanuel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Hi, good morning. I'm
Good morning.
Emmanuel Kani. I'm the fiscal manager at the Department of Health.
Okay. All right, Dr. Eccles.
Okay, and so just to give a heads up, so my accounting team, they're actually getting technical assistance from HRSA, so it's a federal program, so they may have to jump off early, but just want to make sure everyone is aware of that before, just in case they leave.
Okay.
All right, so what I'll do is I'll, one good morning to everyone on the committee. Thank you for your time. And as you all know, the health department has been extremely busy managing the COVID-19 pandemic. But in addition to that, the Department of Health team has worked diligently to not lose sight of the pre-existing conditions that were adversely impacting the City of St. Louis residents and visitors. As established at the start of my tenure when planning this year's budget, we implemented a team approach involving members of the health department's executive leadership team to ensure the department's FY22 budget request reflects the true needs of the agency. So now what I'll do is I'll kind of go through the substantive changes that were included in this year's budget that was presented to the Board of ENA. And I'll give you the page number in case you want to follow along. Everything will be in sequential order. For the director's budget, which is Account Center 700, on page 307. This includes the supportive reentry programming for the health department, which totaled a little over $1.8 million. $530,000 is allocated for the Cops and Clinicians program, which is also known as the co-responder program. This program is necessary to connect persons with the appropriate support they need instead of directing them just to law enforcement. For example, if someone needs mental health, if they call 911 with a mental health complaint, we'll be able to connect them with a mental health service provider instead of the police. As it currently functions, the systems in place disadvantage those who are most vulnerable and funnel them into the criminal justice system. So the ultimate goal of this program is to divert individuals away from the criminal justice system by connecting them with the services they need. These services may include housing, which will cover rental and mortgage assistance, mental health services and behavioral health services, utility assistance, food assistance, and employment, particularly for those who may be justice involved. Included also in that $1.8 million is $747,180 for 12 positions, the salary and fringes for 12 positions, which include a project director, administrative assistant, grants manager, program manager 2, public health nurse 2, program analyst 1, 1 client service coordinator 2, and 5 client service coordinator positions that would essentially entail our supportive reentry program. And then $520,319 is allocated for professional services related to different support systems that may be needed to for this particular project as well. So there are agencies that are currently providing some of the services that were mentioned before, providing them with additional funding support to continue that work over the course of the year. Next on page, under the 700 on page 309, we also have cure violence. So for FY22, we're requesting $3 million to support the 3 cure violence sites and conduct a formal evaluation of the program. The goal here is to ensure the community is informed about the progress of the program and the impact it is having in our communities. The evaluation, which will likely be done by Washington University's Institute of Public Health, we're hoping that will start in early FY22, particularly hopefully in the month of July. And again, the goal is to make sure that we have objective information regarding the implementation of the program so that our stakeholders, which includes elected officials and the community at large, are well informed about the program and its progress. On page 313, again under budget 700, there were 2 additional epidemiologists that were approved for FY22. And the focus of for these 2 positions will be data management and program support. Over the course of the pandemic, as we had to navigate different surveillance system and data management systems, it's really important for us to have additional capacity to properly manage the data that's coming into the health department, not just for communicable diseases, but for other programs as well. And so overall, this will help us streamline data management to ensure more timely analysis and report any developments to elected officials and stakeholders in a timely manner. In addition, it's also important for us to be able to make sure that information regarding public health programs is available to the community at large via a public-facing platform. And so one of the goals of the health department is to develop dashboards for all public health programs. And this information we hope will be published on a public facing platform to ensure the community at large is also better informed about the state of health in the city and also in their specific ward or zip code. On page 314, we move into 1410, which is COVID-19 related funding. So what you'll find here is additional positions that have been approved for the health department. There are 6 public health program representative positions. These individuals primarily focus on COVID-19 related activities, including disease investigation, contact tracing, and community engagement. We also have established specific roles for our public health program representatives as they serve as the point of contact or liaison between the health department and critical essential stakeholders such as academic institutions, community-based organizations, and hospitals. We also have 2 food establishment inspectors two additional food establishment inspectors that were approved for the health department. And this is related to COVID because a lot of the food establishment activities was related to infection control, which in turn helps mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And so that's the justification for those 2 positions. We also have an executive secretary 1. This executive secretary 1 position would help provide administrative support for our public health representatives and their management team. Under 711, moving to page 321, which is under communicable disease. There was under 1410, as I kind of mentioned before, there are 6 additional public health program representatives that have been approved to assist with COVID-19 related activities and disease investigation and community outreach. Under Account Center 714, which is our animal care and control program, if you move on page 326, it shows the changes there. One is we requested an animal regulation center supervisor. We requested 2, we were granted 1. We were requesting the 2nd position just because right now it's difficult for one staff to essentially be on call 24 hours. And so rotating a schedule, right now we're have a rotating schedule, which includes other management staff, but those other management staff also have their full-time programs. And so having them work full-time, a full shift in the office, and then be on call overnight when sometimes the calls come in at 2 a.m., 1 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, then having them come back into the office is a liability. And so that's why we requested the 2nd animal regulation center supervisor to ensure better coverage and reduce the liability of any type of potential health-related issues for our staff. Also, animal care control officers, we were authorized 9, which is needed to ensure the health department is able to provide a timely response to animal-related community complaints. That's an increase from 6 that we had last year, and so we were grateful for the increase in animal care and control officers. In Account Center 715, we have environmental health services, and this is on page 330. We were granted 2 additional food establishment inspectors, as I mentioned before, 2 under general revenue, and then the 2 additional positions under the 1410 or the CARES funding. So in total, we have 12 environmental health services food establishment inspectors. And this was necessary, adding additional food establishment inspectors was necessary to more closely align the health department's food safety program with FDA standards. We looked at the caseload for our staff. In most cases, it was more than 2 or 3 times the recommended number of inspections compared to, as outlined by the FDA. For our community health program, this is primarily grant funded. There were no changes recommended or proposed for this upcoming year, so there are no changes there. But I also wanted to give some insight as far as the activities that the health department has conducted to secure additional funding over the course of the pandemic. So during the pandemic, the health department secured several new grants. One is the CARS grant, which is the Community Approaches to Reducing STDs, which is a grant that's provided directly from the CDC in the amount of roughly $990,000 over the course of 3 years. We also have a new grant with the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services for ending the HIV epidemic. This is about roughly a $1.75 million grant over the course of 3 years. The first year that we were awarded $547,000, and that contract is executed now. For our Human Resources and Services Administration, which is also our Ryan White program, we were awarded over $6 million for that, and that contract has been executed as well. For our housing opportunities for persons with HIV and AIDS, which is funded through the Housing and Urban Development Agency, we were awarded a little over $2 million for that grant. We also received multiple micro grants from organizations such as the National Association for County and City Health Officials for operational readiness, as well as we were also received smaller micro grant from the CDC for improving our environmental health activities as relates to food inspections. We also pursued, there was another grant opportunity that we were awarded through SAMHSA, which is a $1.6 million grant for criminal justice diversion, which will help support the activity that we are conducting through the Cops and Clinicians program. And so that program is also up and running. And then one final project that we were able to help secure, although the health department wasn't eligible because we were a government entity, we worked with Generate Health and Jamar Birth Village to secure a $1 million grant, making the city of St. Louis the first city in mid-America to receive the Safer Childbirth Cities Initiative Award from Merck Pharmaceuticals. So although we have general revenue funding to support some of our programs, we also have recognized the need to secure additional funding to support the program and do some of the critical work that we need to change the trajectory or improve the trajectory of health for City of St. Louis residents and visitors.
Is that all, Dr. Eccles?
There is
not that you're lacking in anything, but
So there is one other, so I know there's a lot of questions about the cure violence. So what I want to do, if I can really briefly, is share a slide deck on, and I won't take up too much time. I know we're pressed for time. So if I can, I'll share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you can let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see it. Can the other members of the group see it?
Yep.
Okay. So what I wanted to do is give an update on where we are with cure violence implementation, specifically the program and the different sites, but also wanted to kind of put things in perspective as well. So what we did was we looked at the data going back to January 1 of 2017 through May 21st of this year. And so what you'll see, and as I go through the slide deck, is just the trends that we've noticed related to firearm use in the city of St. Louis and how the cure violence program is working in its current catchment areas. So you look at this histogram, you'll see that overall in 2021, we've started off with the lower incidence of gun violence in the city of St. Louis. However, of note is what transpired in 2020. So when we look at the data for 2020, which is this yellow line here, we saw a significant increase between the months of April to June. And we look at what was happening during that time. That was when we had the stay-at-home orders in place. So a lot more people were at home, and what we saw is an increase in not only gun violence, but also domestic violence and other issues related to violence. And that didn't really taper off until, well, the initial decline started in July. And then we've seen a gradual decline since that time. This year, we're faring off a little bit better, but there's still a lot of work to be done as it relates to gun violence, incidents of gun violence in the city of St. Louis. And we classify gun violence as firearm-related homicide, aggravated assault, or robbery. Then we wanted to break out for these the different types of gun violence incidents. So for aggravated assault, as you can see, going back to 2017, has accounted for the highest incidence of gun violence incidents in the city of St. Louis. Robbery is essentially second, and then and homicides have remained relatively stable between 0 to 50 over the last few years. But as of note, as you can see here, between April and May, we've seen declines in aggravated assault as well as in homicides in the city of St. Louis. I wanted to break out homicides, particularly for the Cure Violence program. This is their primary focus, of preventing gun-related homicide. And so as we look at the homicide data, at the beginning of the year, we started off at 21 in January. So, this is citywide data. This isn't specific to the catchment areas. I want to make sure that clear. So the 3 slides that I'm presenting now are for citywide data, not just the catchment areas. So across the city, there were 21 firearm-related homicides in the city of St. Louis. And then between January and February, there was a decline, then a further decline from February to March. And then between March and April, there was an increase. We're not sure what accounts for that at this point in time, but we're looking into that. But between April and May, we've seen another decline in the incidence of firearm-related homicides. And then this is for all of the city of St. Louis. Now specifically about Cure Violence. So we know that there's a lot of movement as it relates to Cure Violence, going back to 2018, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of advocacy. And then in 2019, the Board of Aldermen allocated funds through a board bill, through the legislative process, of about $7 million for Cure Violence implementation in the city of St. Louis. The tenets of the program are, 1, to detect and interrupt conflicts, identify and treat the highest risk individuals, and to change social norm through community engagement. So now I'll kind of talk about what's happening at these 3 sites, which we know are, the first one is in Wells Goodfellow, Hamilton Heights. The official start date for this site was June 1, 2020. Since that time, they've held 40 community engagement events. There have been 229 interruptions, meaning that they've interrupted situations that could have led to additional acts of gun violence. And they've managed a total of 27 high-risk clients. And these high-risk clients are individuals who were previously justice involved or recently justice involved, but are essentially at increased risk for engaging in conducting acts of gun violence. The second site is Dutchtown. So Dutchtown, the Dutchtown site was officially started in November of 2020. Since that site has started, they've conducted 26 community events, 81 interruptions, and they continue to manage approximately 17 high-risk clients. And then Walnut Park is the last location to get stood up, and so this program officially started in January 1, 2021. And since the start of this site, opening of this site, there have been 16 community events, 16 interruptions, and 37 management of 37 high-risk clients. And so oftentimes this piece is missing because you don't know what's being prevented. And so all of these interruptions, so again, 229 in Wells Goodfellow, Hamilton Heights, 81 in Dutchtown, and 16 in Walnut Park. These interruptions could have been additional homicides or firearm-related events. Then we look at each site individually, and so you can see over time for Wells Goodfellow to Hamilton Heights, since 2017, there's been a decline in aggravated assault and robbery and homicides. But this year is really remarkable because we're halfway through the year, and based on our current trajectory, we will see an overall decline in all 3 categories by the end of the year, which is really speak to the work that the teams are doing in the field and the support that they're receiving from Cure Violence Global as it relates to implementation. For Dutchtown, again, aggravated assault and robbery have been down significantly, and again, based on the current trajectory, in this for this catchment area, we'll likely see an overall deep reduction in aggravated assault, robbery, and homicide if they maintain this trajectory. Then for the Walnut Park catchment area, very similar. They're seeing only 2 homicides so far. We're almost at month 6 of this year. And so again, similar to the other sites, with the exception of robberies, they should, if they stay on their current trajectory, they should see overall reduction in aggravated assault and homicide for the year 2021, sorry. But we are mindful that we're approaching the summer months, and typically there's more activity over the summer months, as we've seen in previous years. And so we'll be working more closely with the sites to make sure that there's more community engagement, more opportunities to really engage individuals who are high risk for high risk for conducting acts of gun violence. Then we also conducted heat maps. So the heat maps show the density of gun violence in the city of St. Louis. And again, this is for the entire city. So going back to 2017, and what we've seen was that the data-driven approach that was implemented to select the sites were appropriate. So in northern part of the city, where we have Wells Goodfellow, Hampton Heights, as well as Walnut Park, those 2 sites are covered. And then in South City, where we have the Dutchtown site, if you look at the trends from 2017 through 2021, the sites that were selected were appropriate. Then we wanted to break it out using just looking at homicides across the city as well. And so if you can look at one thing that we appreciate by looking at this over time is that you see a gradual shift, eastward shift of gun violence related to homicides related to gun violence in the city of St. Louis, which is concerning for us because we're identifying some additional hot pockets. As you know, gun violence can move from ward to ward, zip code to zip code, depending on the people in the community. And so we'll be using this information to make recommendations as it relates to potential new cure violence sites. So based on the heat maps, we did the hotspot analysis that we did. We identified 3 additional areas that could serve as potential locations for cure violence sites. So one is the Baden area, which is here. This is Baden, and then the Greaterville area, and the downtown Carr Square, Columbus Square area are all new hotspots that have been identified. But we also don't want to forget about Walnut Park West. So there's still some activity outside of the catchment area for Walnut Park, and particularly in Walnut Park West. And so one idea would be a recommendation would be to expand the boundaries for this site and give this site additional support in the form of additional staff, so that both Walnut Park East and Walnut Park West could be properly covered, because the entire Walnut Park neighborhood, East and West, are deemed to be hotspot. So that's kind of where we are at this point in time. Our goal is to make sure that we are providing updated information to our stakeholders, including elected officials and the community at large, about the status of the program, the progress of the program, and the challenges the program may be having as it relates to stopping gun violence, addressing issues related to gun violence in City of St. Louis communities. But again, one thing we also want to continue to highlight is the fact that the Cure Violence program is only in designated catchment areas. It's not a city-wide program at this point. And so we want people to be mindful of that. And so hopefully, the results that we're seeing over the course of this year will speak to the need to either further support this program moving forward. And now I'll take any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Dr. Eccles. That was a very good representation. I think we've all been wanting to know about the function of cure violence and how it's beginning to work. So at this time, I will call upon committee members to ask questions. Alderman Boyd, Jeffrey Boyd. Any questions? Are you still on? Doesn't look like he is. Okay, Alderman Vaquero.
Yeah, actually a couple. So this would be an additional 3 million, even over the 7 million.
No, so we're just spending down the 7 million. So of the 7 million, we're appropriating 3 million for this upcoming year.
And how much have we spent so far?
So far, we have spent roughly around $2 million for period violence. There was some delays that we encountered last year because of COVID-19. So that the delayed start date means that we didn't spend as much money as we thought we were going to do over the course of the previous fiscal year.
And I know you said you've been sending stuff to stakeholders. I haven't seen anything. This is a first. So are we not one of the stakeholders?
No. So I said the goal is to make sure we're sending information to stakeholders. So we want to make sure the information that we send you all is accurate, up to date. But we also want to make sure it's easily adjustable, because some of the as we pull data, sometimes the data can be really confusing if it's not packaged appropriately. So we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence on our end to make sure it's meaningful to you all as well.
Yeah, so I haven't seen any of these reports, and I get calls from people all the time feeling that this was money that's been wasted and that there's nothing. I mean, since we started the program, last year we broke the record on murders, and this year we're ahead of the record on murders from last year. And people are going, well, ever since we did pure violence, it's done nothing. You know, and I saw the chart and I saw how you dilute, you know, well, things are better, but they're not. And, you know, things that it seems like we shift crime from one area to another when we do these triangles and all that. But so sticking with the budget, and I'll keep this very short, but sticking with the budget, we spent 2 million and we have what, 3 sites open, is it? How many sites do we have open?
Right, there are 3 sites that are up and running.
And is this to expand more sites? Or those sites are costing more now? You said it was 2 million. Are we gonna give 3 million to the same sites? Or are we gonna open up more sites? Or what's the story?
No, so address a couple of your other questions before. So as it relates to violence overall in the city, so what the primary focus for the presentation was for those catchment areas where the program is being implemented. So although the rates of gun violence can be down in those catchment areas because of the work that's being done, we may see increases outside those catchment areas. So the overall numbers for the city could go up if there's increased violence outside of the gun violence outside of the catchment areas. But for the upcoming year, so the $3 million was set aside because we wanted to do a formal evaluation. We didn't have strong numbers about what the cost for that would be. And so we don't anticipate spending $3 million this year. It actually should be less than 2 million if everything goes out. But we want to make sure we didn't fall short and need additional monies midway through the year. But based on what we're seeing right now, we shouldn't spend $3 million over the course of FY22.
It just seems like we're, you know, if we're not going to spend that money, maybe we appropriate the lesser amount, you know.
Well, the money stays in that account because it's a special fund, so it stays in that account even if we don't spend it. So it rolls over to the next year.
Okay, I just know I get a lot of grief. You know, I won't name a name, but someone from the personnel department especially asked to want to know, where is this money going? And it seems like it's a waste. And I think I'm going to have you come over to public safety in the next couple of weeks. We'll have a meeting specifically on this again. So keep your charts together and I think be prepared for another group to ask questions, you know, because you know, no matter how you try to wash it out or do whatever or dilute it, crime is up. Violent crime is up. Not only just murders, carjackings and car clottings, and crime is up. So anyway, and that's way off the subject. So anyway, I guess that would be my issue. I'm just interested about the $7 million. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, I'm going to hang on as long as I can, but I also will be listening.
Do you have any further questions?
No other questions, but I might be having to leave the meeting. There's no vote. I'll be listening.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Dr. Eccles, for being here with us today. And I want to thank you for giving us a pretty robust overview of your budget and looking into things. I especially having gone through several departments now, I think you did an excellent job kind of overviewing things and getting into some of the details. So it, precluded us from many of the questions that we would otherwise ask going into details. One of the things that's just, we kind of go through these and look line by line this year versus last year, that really sticks out is some of the additional contractual services in this year's budget on page 308. It looks like the health department in years past has, contracted, communications and things like that, but there are several additional items here, legal assistance and stuff like that. Can you walk us through some of the contracts, the new contracts, and kind of the process that the health department goes through to issue contracts? Or is it?
Right, so
and I'm sorry, Dr. Eccles, if this was explained, I missed a little bit of the presentation. I had to step out for a moment, but.
Right, so the majority of the contractual and other services that are listed are standard. Look, there are a couple of new ones, particularly those that haven't been funded before, are part of the reentry program. So we need to make sure that we have proper guidance, proper support to make sure that individuals who participate in that program don't fall through the cracks. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence to identify any areas that needed to be funded. And so that's where these items are included. So individual counseling, legal assistance, leasing medical care, minor homework care, supplemental groceries, transitional housing, and transportation were all identified as potential needs for those individuals. Because we know as individuals try to reacclimate to society, there's a lot of hurdles. And so the health department can be a source of support for those individuals, at least until we're able to connect them to another service provider. This helps us bridge that gap to ensure the individuals don't fall through the crack. And
so all those additional contracts, the contractual services essentially doubled from 600,000 to 1.2 million. So those additional services are related to the reentry programs.
Right.
And so they could, I guess, in theory, be the reentry program is identified on page 303, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that would just be that's just the staffing associated with that. So I see it's kind of separate. In a general sense, the health department does have a lot of contracts. The professional services, like 2.3 million, is that the cure violence?
Correct.
It's so hard sometimes to understand what all these are. And Dr. Eccles, did you see how many employees the health department currently has?
Right now, I believe there's roughly around 130. But these additional programs, so the reentry program would add 12 staff to the health department's table of organization. Then we also have 6 public health program representatives and 2 food establishment inspectors that will be added to the health department's TL.
But not through the reentry program.
Not through the reentry program. Okay. Just only 12 staff will be a part of the reentry program.
One of the things that's unusual about the health department is that there's funding sources from all over line items when you look at the income. So it's really, I think we often get quoted as saying like 0.1% of our budget goes to health, but there's a lot more. That's just from the general fund. There's so many other funds that go into the health department. What is the total budget for the health department last year versus this year, Dr. Eccles, just to have a firm understanding of what that looks like?
I'm going to defer to Paul Payne on the total numbers because I know that it fluctuated a little bit.
Director Payne, are you still with us?
I'm here.
We can okay.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring up the budget, the annual operating plan document, which we've also got a number of hard copies, but it is available online. Let me see if I can get there real quickly. Because it will summarize, as you mentioned, a number of the various funds that comprise a department's budget. So let's go here. I'm going to share a screen if I could. Do you see my screen?
No, we don't.
Yes.
Now we do.
There
I
it
didn't
is.
know if you
Okay.
did. Sorry.
Right, this is yeah, no, this is right out of the annual operating plan. Again, this is posted online. We do have hard copies, which we can send down if you need them. But here it is. It's basically the largest portion of the doc budget is under the local use tax fund. But then there, as you mentioned, there's also a small piece that's in the general fund. And then grant and other funds comprise about, 18 million. So a total, all funds in is about $34.6 million, which is about a $4 million increase, a little over $4 million increase from the prior year. And you can see the total personnel below that, went from 95.6 to 111.5.
So that's an increase, Paul, of how much? What is it total?
From 30.56 to 34.64.
30. Great, that's really helpful.
It's about.
All right, thanks, Paul. And then Dr. Eccles, just lastly, I know there was some discussion about like that. I just wanted some clarification on the contracting piece. Does that usually go through like a RFP process, or how does that usually happen?
Yes, we usually put out an RFP. However, if there's only one service provider, we'll work with the either supply commissioner or our board for sole source if that's required. But the typical practice is for us to issue an RFP, and then we will receive the proposals, and we typically have a group of independent reviewers not attached to the health department to actually review, but are subject matter experts to review the proposals to ensure that we indeed selecting the best candidate.
And that's for all the contracts with the health department, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dr. Eccles. That's all I have, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Alderwoman Pamela Boyd. I think she's gone. Alderman John Collins Muhammad. Okay. I guess it's Alderwoman Navarro. There you go.
On the end of the line today, and I won't take up too much time. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you, Dr. Eccles. I too just want to reiterate how nice it is, especially at the end of a long meeting, for you just to walk us through your budget and highlight the priorities and what's going on. So thank you very much for that. One just clarification on page 321, under the public, so at the very bottom, the public health program representative, I thought I heard when we were talking, you said 6, I think, positions there. It says 3. And I know there's another place where we were talking about 6 positions. So I just wanted to double check that, is that number right that's there?
So there's 3 there, but there's the total number is, we go back to the director's budget under 1410.
On page 314.
On page 314, right. So it lists that all of the public health program representatives under 1410 are listed there. So that's 6.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that we had the numbers right in there. Okay, so thank you. If that looks good to you, then I'm good with it. I did want to ask about under animal control. It sounds like, you know, the ideally we'd have at least 2 people managing that center, but there's just 1 in the budget this year. Is that correct?
Right. And so this is a critical position, as you mentioned. So because having our fiscal manager and other executive leadership members manage animal care and control after hours creates, again, liability issues as it relates to safety, particularly they're getting very little sleep and then they're traveling to the office. So we're just very mindful of that. And so that's why we requested 2 animal control supervisors.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable request. I feel like the word on the street is that, you know, unless an animal actually takes a chunk out of your child, nobody's coming. That's what they've been told, you know, well, we understand there's a problem, there's a threatening animal, whatever it is, have they hurt anybody? And everybody feels like I've got to wait. And I've seen people seriously injured after many complaints. So what's the shortfall? So if there were 2 positions there, what would be the amount? What's the amount missing because that position is only funded for 1 position instead of 2?
So the amount missing, let me pull my.
What would be the total if it were funded for 2?
If we were funded for 2, it'd essentially be roughly about 85,000 to cover both positions.
Okay, and that includes whatever, are those, yeah, any other benefits or anything that comes along? Okay, great, thank you. And then I wanted to ask quickly about, so page 328, I just flipped to environmental health services, and then also page 331, lead poisoning control. Those are both zeroed out. So can you just explain to me what we're doing there?
Oh, yeah, so this was a part of the, so in the past, the air pollution program was its own separate program, and it was attached to a special tax, revenue tax. And so what we did was just pulled them under 715, which is the environmental health services program, so that those positions are now permanent positions, and they're, and us maintaining them on our TO isn't dependent on the revenue that's generated by. Because what we saw in 2020 was that there was a reduction in the revenue that was generated by those programs just because of COVID-19. And so that really put those 2 positions in jeopardy. And so we worked with Paul Payne and the mayor's office to have those relocated to 715.
Okay, and which page are those, have those been added to then? And that's great to hear that we didn't just lose them.
I think they're on page 329, right across the way.
Same page.
Sorry, there were several people at one time.
This is Beverly Murray, and you're trying to find out where did we move the air pollution specialist to? If you go on the same page at 330, if you go up to 1110, you'll see, it's not in alphabetical order, but go down and you will see the air pollution inspectors there.
Okay, so that, okay, great. So that correlates with what's on page 328. Okay, and then I guess same question then for the lead poisoning control. Is that, if I go to 330, is that reflected over on that? I just want to make sure we're not losing, nothing's falling off here.
Right. So our lead poisoning or our lead control program is funded by the state under the maternal child health program. So that's under the family community school health.
Okay. Okay, so that'll be after, okay, so like page 334.
Correct, but those are primarily covered by grant funds. So it wouldn't show up as a general use, local use tax.
Okay, so we still have, we still have some staffing associated to lead poisoning, but it's reflected in this family community school health piece. Okay, all right, I just wanted to double check that. Great, thank you. And I think that's all that I have. Thank you very much. Carol, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Dr. Eccles, the presentation that you did for the Cure Violence, can you forward that to the Board of Aldermen and share it with all of us, please? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. Lisa Middlebrook, is she on? And also Alderman Evans, are you on? No, she's gone. Okay, Alderman Gunther, do you have any questions? Okay, are there anyone else online that has questions? Okay.
Madam Vice Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. Yeah, I see your hand now. It's in the light. Okay.
Yeah,
Go
thanks.
ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Eccles. That was a very thorough presentation of your budget, and I very much appreciate that and the slides that you presented as well. One question about the COPS and Clinicians program. So that the grant fund through the health department, is that continuing to be managed by the health department, or is that is that under public safety, or where is sort of the management and oversight of that program?
Yeah, so that's still under the health department. And so, but we're working with the behavioral health response for that. So formerly it was known as the COPS and Clinicians program, but now we call it the co-responder program.
Okay.
So that's essentially the health department, because we didn't have the capacity to actually do that work. We partnered with an organization that did. And so behavioral health response is lifting that work for us, and we'll be renewing their contract as well.
Okay, so you're managing the contract, but all official duties and everything will be supervised by the police department, or how?
No, so they still report to the health department. So we oversee the services, and then they provide monthly reports and everything to us, so we can track the progress of the program. And then if there's any issues, we also dialogue with them regularly as well to make sure that if there are any challenges that are recognized, that we can take the necessary steps to address those. And if there are opportunities to make the program more efficient based off of feedback that they're getting from community or some of the other partners, we can make the necessary adjustments.
Okay, great. I had a question from a neighborhood association last night that asked if a family has a family member who has mental health issues, and they know that there have been a reoccurrence of calls, or that they know that they're going to need that type of emergency response. Is their question was if there was sort of a pre-registry list that you could put your family member on, so that anytime that address came up, it was flagged sort of in the 911 system as this is going to be a mental health call, so that there's always going to be a behavioral response there. Is that contemplated within the program? Do you know?
So that's something we will have to work on with the 911 dispatcher, because they're the ones that will receive the call. So there's a way to alert them that this particular address has recording. We have to work with them to see if there's a way to kind of manage that information while maintaining HIPAA compliance as well, especially if it's attached to a certain individual. And the other thing is that we don't want them to automatically assume that it's going to be related to mental illness or behavioral health, because it could be a violent incident. So we don't want to skew them in any way. Instead, we would prefer for them to just follow their protocol, like that they're trained on, to ask the right questions and then make sure that the case is properly triaged. However, I do think that there may be some utility in having a database where we have, of individuals or residences that have individual mental illness, but that may be more appropriate for the health department to maintain that. So as individuals are referred to the health department, we can properly triage based on the information that we've collected over time.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to see that system abused or anything. It was more as concerned family members that any type of emergency response would also include behavioral health, so that their family members could be protected.
I think to your point as well, so if a family member has, and if families have an individual in their household that has mental illness, I think what we would want them to do is know who to call in the first place. Right. So make sure they know how to contact either a mental health service provider through United Way, or direct call the behavioral health response directly, rather than calling 911 and calling all these other places beforehand. So we can help them streamline that process That'll help reduce some of the calls that our police department may likely receive due to mental illness.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much.
I think Alderwoman Spencer's in charge now.
Yeah, I think we lost our vice chair.
It looks like we did lose our vice chair there. So I guess, Madam Clerk, do we have any additional folks who have questions for Dr. Eccles that we should?
Alderwoman Spencer?
Yes.
I was just going to say, I just also wanted to thank Dr. Eccles and Beverly and everyone at the health department this last year. I know it's been particularly challenging. And I know we're just looking at the budget, moving forward, but just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for everything that you've done for our city. So thank you, under unbelievable circumstances. So thank you.
Well, it's a team effort, so,
Thank you, Alderwoman Navarro, and Dr. Eccles, thank you from the committee, and thank you from the Board of Aldermen and the general public. I think we all can agree with that.
It looks like Alderwoman Howard has her hand up. So she's here with us somewhere.
She's in the attendee room, not in the panelist room. So STL TV, if you could move Alderwoman Howard over.
There she is.
Red Rover, please send Alderwoman Howard over.
Alderwoman Howard. There she is. Okay.
Okay. All right. Now it finally came up. My battery, I just thought I explained to everybody. My battery died on my other device, so I'm on my phone now. But I appreciate your attendance today and your staff coming along, and my neighbor, Miss Beverly Murray. I'm happy to see her. I haven't seen her in a while. So I appreciate everyone. And if no one has any further questions, Dr. Eccles, you are dismissed, and we hope we can support you further. Okay.
Thank you for your time today.
All right.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Do we need to adjourn?
Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All right. Next time I'll have to.
Heather, do you want to, Alderwoman Navarro second? Can we take a previous roll on that?
Yeah. Well, no, because people have
Spend way
left.
more time on motions to adjourn than is necessary.
I don't think. Okay, great. All right.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.